Welcome, everyone. I now call the March 5th, 2024 regular City Council meeting to order. This evening, we welcome Girl Scout Service Units 411 and 412 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name. City clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns. Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Councilmember Alders.
Here.
Councilmember Kurd.
Here.
Councilmember Menke.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmember Zorns, who is absent and excused.
Thank you. We will now adjourn to executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I, potential litigation for 30 minutes with no action expected. We will reconvene the regular meeting at 6:01 p.m. Welcome back. It's now 6:01 p.m. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently, and mute your microphone when not speaking. Next up is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on to public engagement opportunities. We have the community budget survey. You can help us shape the 2025-2026 budget. Check your mailbox for postcard mailer and complete by March 24th. If you didn't get a postcard, stay tuned to social and email for more survey links. We also have a free pet event with Rainier Animal Fund on Friday, April 5th from 12 to 3 p.m. You can bring your dog or cat to Bothell Police for vaccines, microchip, and pet license. First come, first serve. All right, next up, we have some proclamations. The first proclamation is for Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and Councilmember Alders is going to read this proclamation into the record and present.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society, and whereas Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month provides the opportunity to raise awareness about the inclusion of people with developmental disabilities in all facets of community life and acknowledge the systemic barriers that people with disabilities face in connecting with the communities in which they live. And whereas we recognize the many accomplishments of people with developmental disabilities who come from all racial, ethnic, educational, social, and economic backgrounds, and who are invaluable members of our community as neighbors, coworkers, classmates, voters, friends, and family. And whereas we strive to increase developmental disabilities awareness and acceptance by challenging preconceived and outdated attitudes and beliefs about the abilities of people with developmental disabilities. And whereas we recognize examples of disability inclusion in our community, including organizations like Kindering, the ARC of Snohomish County, and the Alyssa Burnett Center that are dedicated to supporting and celebrating people with disabilities through pediatric and adult therapies, recreation activities, and life skill classes. And whereas we recognize that equitable experiences and full inclusion are matters of justice and call for the shared responsibility of community members to foster welcoming, accessible, and supportive environments, policies, and systems for all. Now, therefore, I, Jenny Alders, on behalf of Mayor Thompson, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim March 2024 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in the City of Bothell and encourage local businesses, community organizations, and city staff to actively and intentionally review their practices to make sure individuals of all ages who have intellectual and developmental disabilities are included in their programs and welcome in their facilities. Thank you.
City Clerk, do we have someone here to accept the?
I believe we have members from community partnerships here to accept. So if you'd like to step to the podium, Councilmember Aldrich will present it to you. And you're welcome to say a few words after that as well.
And the mic is on.
Good evening, and thank you for celebrating Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month with us. And thank you so much for recognizing Kindering alongside other wonderful organizations with this beautiful proclamation. My name is Mustafa Kebe, and I am Kindering's Chief Program Officer. I want to share with you why it is important to us to see local government like yourselves elevate the disability community. First, let me give a brief background about Kindering. Kindering is a state-designated neurodevelopmental center of excellence. We are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is we at Kindering embraces children of diverse abilities and their families by providing the finest education and therapies to nurture hope, courage, and skill to soar. Each year, we reach thousands of children and families with pediatric therapy, early special education services, family support, training, and many more. In Bothell, we are very close to the Bothell community. Last year alone, we served more than 1,000 children in Bothell with our pediatric therapy, early learning programs, and other services. You may also be aware that one of our 4 major campuses is located in Bothell. Last year, we were proud to double the number of classrooms, classroom capacities in Bothell alone. We are also very grateful to this city that has supported some of our equity-focused programs, including childcare and preschool consultation, which helps preschool childcare providers to support the needs of children in their care who have developmental delays in challenging behaviors, and so on. Families in transition, which supports the developmental needs of children experiencing housing instability. Let me get to the crux of the matter. Why is it important to celebrate this Developmental Disability Awareness Month? It is because people with disabilities face a myriad of disadvantages in our communities from birth through adulthood and from classrooms to the workspace. Kindering's equity vision is an equitable world where people of all abilities, identities, and backgrounds belong and thrive. Developmental Disability Awareness Month allows us to recognize both the barriers as well as the achievements of the disability community. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the City of Bothell for taking time to acknowledge both things and for using your platform to support the disability community. We say thank you very much and bravo, keep it up.
Hi, my name is Amber, and my son attended Kindering from the ages of 3 months to 3.5. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to be a part of such an inclusive community, because I know some parents aren't. And as a parent with someone who has a child with disabilities, it really empowered me as a parent, and I never felt alone. And the biggest thing was for my son Avery, who's now 4. He is a thriving, confident 4-year-old because Kindering and the city of Bothell was surrounding him and supporting him and teaching him there's no limits. He is different, but it's okay to be different. And they supported him any way he could to do whatever he wanted. And I think that makes a difference for a child's confidence and just being who they want to be in the future. And I feel lucky that I had that privilege, but hopefully other cities will take suit and copy you guys, because I believe all children should have that privilege as well.
Do you guys want to get a picture with council? All right.
Can anybody who's here to support the Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month proclamation, if you'd like to be in the picture?
I know, right? All right, next up, we have a proclamation for Women's History Month, and Councilmember Dodd is going to read that proclamation into the record and present.
Thank you. And I want to call out that this was written by Service Units 411 and 412 as well, who led us in the pledge earlier. So thank you for joining us to author this. So, Women's History Month. Whereas Girl Scouts are honest and fair, we recognize Stacey Abrams, who, after observing the mismanagement of a 2018 election, launched Fair Fight, an organization dedicated to ensure the voice of all voters could be heard in 20 battleground states. And whereas Girl Scouts are friendly and helpful, we recognize Clara Barton, nicknamed the Angel of the Battlefield for her nursing service during the Civil War, who later founded the American Red Cross. And whereas Girl Scouts are considerate and caring, we recognize Frances Perkins, who was President Roosevelt's Secretary of Labor and the first woman to hold a presidential cabinet position. Frances helped get America out of the Great Depression and facilitated the admission of more than 180,000 Jewish refugees into the United States. And whereas Girl Scouts are courageous and strong, we recognize Ruby Bridges, who at just 6 years old became the first African-American girl to integrate an elementary school in the South, a daily act that required the protection of 4 federal marshals as she walked past threatening mobs. And whereas Girl Scouts are responsible for what we say and do, we recognize Elizabeth Smith Friedman, a cryptographer who during World War II cracked the German Enigma code and a Nazi spy ring that planned to invade the United States through South America, and upheld an oath to keep her role a secret until her death. And whereas Girl Scouts respect ourselves and others, we recognize Eleanor Roosevelt, who created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was based on the U.S. Bill of Rights but written to be sensitive and acceptable to all religions, cultures, and ideologies. And whereas Girl Scouts respect authority, we recognize Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who successfully sued to enforce the Equal Pay Act and, as the 107th Justice of the Supreme Court, used her written dissents to encourage lawmakers to enact better laws. And whereas Girl Scouts use resources wisely, we recognize Juliette Gordon Lowe, the founder of the Girl Scouts and a master fundraiser who worked to ensure that the diverse group she created would always be girl-led. And whereas Girl Scouts make the world a better place, we recognize Rosa Parks, honored as the First Lady of Civil Rights by Congress, who refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, an act which precipitated the Montgomery bus boycott. And whereas Girl Scouts are as sister to every Girl Scout, we recognize Sylvia Acevedo, who was encouraged as part of earning a Girl Scout science badge to build a model rocket and later became a rocket scientist for NASA. And whereas we learn about history so we will not repeat our mistakes, we have all been helped through the bravery and resilience of those honored and those yet unknown. Following their example, we will make the world a better place for all. Now, therefore, I, Amanda Dodd, on behalf of Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim March 2024 as Women's History Month in the City of Bothell and encourage everyone to join in honoring and celebrating all women by recognizing their contributions to our community and country. And I believe we have some folks here to accept as well.
So, as Girl Scouts, we do cookie sales every year and all kinds of other fall fundraisers to support our troop in all of our activities, like Girl Scout camps and badge receiving, which is like STEM and arts and crafts and all sorts of things. We would like to go to Pike Place Market and a high ropes course and in camporees. We are working to make our community a better place with programs like the Bronze, Silver, and Gold Awards, which are all about helping your community with a permanent, lasting impact. We donated female vests to the local fire department for CPR training, and that really helped people like get used to firefighting or CPR on females. So we're all about helping people, and we would like to recognize all the women who gave us these opportunities in the past. So, yeah.
Girl Scouts of Western Washington works to raise girls of confidence, courage, and character, and we try and expand their experiences, develop their leadership skills, and give all girls a safe place to fail and learn how to work and try again. And we very much appreciate the opportunities that you've provided for us for selling cookies and getting them out there, getting comfortable talking to people that they do not know and accepting a no answer as perfectly okay, and encouraging them that they can change the world and that you guys are open to any ideas that they have to share as well. So thank you very much.
All right, want to get a picture?
Yes, please.
If anybody else would like to come on up and join in on the picture, please feel free to.
Yes.
Thank you. I asked the mayor if we could talk about the proclamations. When we saw these on the calendar, Councilmember Aldrich and I were like, oh my gosh, can we read those? And I thank the mayor for letting us read them. My family moved to Bothell because of the services it offers families and children and adults with developmental disabilities. And then when I realized that Women's History Month was Girl Scout themed, that's how we divvied them up, because as a former Girl Scout, it gave me a lot of delight to be able to go on tour of City Hall earlier with the Girl Scouts. And I wanted to also speak to, we are a great place to live if you are raising a child or a family member or yourself have developmental delays or disabilities. We are close to Seattle Children's. We have Kindering in my part of the city. We have Child's Drive through Snohomish County. My brother went through those agencies. We have Sorensen Early Childhood Center close. When I was a kid, it was in Woodinville, which was still pretty close. And my own son went through Child's Drive from 11 months until 3 when he transitioned to Sorensen. And I would like to think, having talked to everyone here, that we all take that as a duty to make sure that we make our community opening and welcome. So this proclamation is just part of that. But thank you all for staying with us through the beginning of the meeting as we did that and helping support all of our neighbors and our neighborhood children who move here because of those opportunities.
Thank you. All right, next up we have public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but upon the advice of our city attorney, we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk.
Thank you, Mary Thompson. Before we begin, I'd like to just state that public comments shall be limited to topics concerning current, future, or requested city projects, actions, programs, plans, and regulations. Comments not pertaining to these subject matters are not germane and may result in the speaker's comments being suspended. When your 3 minutes starts, the light at the dais will turn green. At 1 minute left, it will start blinking, and at 30 seconds, it will turn yellow. So we had a number of written public comments. So I'll go through those first. Jonathan Lowndes wrote in support for middle housing code amendments, option B. Matt Carter wrote regarding the city's permitting process for frontage improvements. Gary Smith wrote regarding the health benefits of tree conservation. Mark Swanson wrote in opposition of middle housing. And then we have several people signed up to speak. The first one is Emily Ponton. Go ahead. If you go to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Emily Pontaine, and I currently teach 5th grade beginning orchestra at 7 elementary schools in the North Shore School District. As a Kenmore native who started the violin in the North Shore 4th grade orchestra program, I am passionate about providing kids the opportunity to learn an instrument in elementary school. Were it not for that 4th and 5th grade orchestra program, I would not have continued on to join the Seattle Youth Symphony Orchestra, to get my bachelor's of music and violin performance from Western Washington University, and continue playing professionally and teaching to this day. It has been a huge part of my life. For many students, it is also the gateway to their lifelong music making and community involvement. For others, it is their lifeline in school. As you know, Washington state school districts are facing severe budget cuts, and this year in North Shore, music programs are on the line. The teachers' union leadership has recommended that the North Shore School Board and Superintendent Tolley cut the entire 5th grade beginning orchestra and band program. North Shore has had a 5th grade band program for over 40 years, and up until recently has had a 4th and 5th grade orchestra program for just as long. The latest iteration of the elementary instrumental program has allowed every 5th grade student in our very large district the opportunity to choose between general music, orchestra, or band in 5th grade, with classes taking place twice a week for 45 minutes within the school day. Equity was in mind when this program was developed, as not all students are able to attend classes if they are offered outside the school day. This program has put violins, violas, cellos, flutes, clarinets, trumpets, and trombones in the hands of thousands of children. With the lack of state funding and the district's willingness to overlook the vital part that the arts play in the lives of our children, our program is in danger of being cut completely. This will set our district and music departments back decades and take the opportunity of learning an instrument from children who otherwise have no access. I personally have seen the huge impact that these programs have had on all students, and particularly students who struggle in other areas, academically, socially, and emotionally. Annie from Maywood Hills Elementary said, "Orchestra affects my week well, especially when I do well, because it makes me end the day feeling good about myself. This year it would be very different if I did not have this opportunity to do orchestra, because then I don't think I would ever get instruments." Many students stated that orchestra helps them feel calm, confident, mature, capable, and empowered by their ability to choose a class in elementary school. Grayson from Shelton View Elementary said that it helped me feel like my choices matter. Many of my students said they have been looking forward to this since 2nd or 3rd grade, and this year's 4th graders are no exception. I am asking you today to please put pressure on the state to fully fund special education, to make up the deficit in districts' budgets, and to aid your community by creating alternate ways of funding these programs that truly save kids' lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mac Carter.
So I just want to go and say that I agree with her. The music programs here are very important. I'm here to go and to basically continue my request for help with the city on the permitting problems that I'm having with the building of an extension of my house. Basically, I've sent in the written letter this time, so that way I don't ramble on too much. But what I'm constantly getting back from the professionals that are coming to my house to go into quote for these projects that the city is requesting that I do to my frontage is that I'm constantly being told this is not a homeowner's issue, this is a city's issue. The idea of me camming the sewer line in front of my house from one sewer cover to the other is a city issue of maintenance. The placement of the utility lines, I went and I was told today, is going to cost well over $20,000 for the overhead utility lines to go into the ground just across from my property and the property to the north. And the person went and said that because of the condition of the roads, the slope, and everything that's involved with that area, it's a project that should be waiting for the road to go and be redone and reconditioned by the city. And that is actually an activity that is supposed to be instituted by the city itself, not the homeowner. So I still remain very frustrated at the fact that I am constantly being told by professionals in the businesses that do the work that I'm not supposed to be doing it. The city is supposed to be doing it. But the city is asking me to go and to do it in order to maintain, or to attain the permit so that I can build the extension, so I can turn my home into an ADU, so I can allow more people to live at my property, much along the lines of the missing middle. So I want to go and I want to make certain that the city is aware of this and that the public's aware of these additional costs, fees that are extraordinary. I mean, I don't understand why in the world anyone would be asked to do it, to go and to be pushed onto the homeowners. And it seems that just if I get the city to go and follow some of the guidelines that they themselves have, I would go and I'd be free of the aggravation. And that's it.
Thank you. Next, we have Randy Banneker, who I believe is online. So we'll give that a minute.
Good evening. Is my audio working?
It is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Mason, members of the council, I'm Randy Banneker. I'm here on behalf of the Seattle-King County Realtors. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment on the middle housing code amendments that you'll be taking up this evening. I want to thank you for your work, your staff's hard work on this package. Bothell is a leader in the region on these issues. We view the addition of middle housing as a critical path to housing affordability. Smaller units offer tremendous opportunity for middle-income individuals and families to buy and begin building home equity. And this can be done while preserving, if not improving, Bothell's high quality of life. As you contemplate dedicated affordability strategies, and you should, please be aware that the first and best housing affordability strategy is increased housing supply. It's the only way to drive affordability in a sustainable, comprehensive manner. Strategies like inclusionary zoning that narrow the responsibility of providing affordable units to the developer have the effect of increasing the cost of the market rate units. And this reduces opportunities for first-time buyers and/or chills the projects because they no longer can pencil or get financing. Again, I want to thank you for your work on this package. I urge that you move forward. And again, thank you for your regional leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Banneker. Next, we have Laura Scude, who I believe is in the lobby. So she said give her a minute to get in here.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you so much for your time. Big kudos to you to recognize Disability Month as well as Women's Month. Thank you. Anyway, so I would like to comment regarding to the middle housing and the new proposal that are coming. As a resident of Bothell, I have some concern with the adoption of such a broad ordinance, where the risk that the codes does not match what the Bothell resident had envisioned for certain areas. We have concerns about middle housing affordability, and not very well defined or referenced what that actually mean affordability versus middle housing. So we have concerns, folks that I have talked to, that there is going to be some impacts on the market value of the surrounding properties that the current zoning for different things. Also, there are concerns about usage, greenery, traffic, construction, etc. We have a group in West Hill that we meet monthly, last Sunday, and we are there just to listen concerns from everybody within the neighborhood. And we had newcomers to West Hill, and one of them, when we started them informing about what is going on in Bothell, about all these changes in zoning, they were not aware how all this group works in the comments, so they want to know how all this work. And one thing that mentioned when we explained, we showed all the paperwork, one of the things that he expressed was, are this action getting middle affordable housing in certain areas of Bothell something realistic? So affordability of middle housing is not driven often about what the needs are, but more what the market value is. The concern that we have is that some of the areas are becoming no ownership, like we happen right now. They are all built by LLC and no ownership. We have concerns about that people can go and access those areas. We have concern about the trees. We have concern that our West Hill is going to become like a future Ballard, and we know all what happened in that traditional Scandinavian neighborhood. Also, they have concerns about with this current zoning. It was going to happen like what happened right now by the Keeney Stadium. There are no trees there anymore. I drove over there this weekend just to see there all things. We are concerned about that some of the areas will become future Tacoma with no trees. And furthermore, just to finish, because we have the warning here, we are very concerned that climate change will affect some of the zoning. So instead of to wait, we just have to have the zoning parallel, how we're going to see that area and that end of Bothell. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your hard work and for listening some of the time for the City Council to talk to us individually. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mark Swanson, who is online. Mark, can you hear us? You're muted.
I can, Laura. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Greetings to everyone. I hope you're in the best of health and that your verve for life is undiminished. I'm a 33-year resident of Bothell and a homeowner for 30 years on West Hill. I wish to submit the following opinions in opposition for the record. There is no functioning quorum for the City Council and the Planning Commission. All former and current members on the Council and the Planning Commission of the Bothell Group that has met regularly in person and online for 4 years appear to have a conflict of interest, in my opinion. The founder of the Bothell Group, Carrie Westerbeck, is a self-avowed urbanist who has announced on social media that Bothell has been aggressively changing the culture of Bothell. These are former and current members of the local group known as Bothellites for People-Oriented Places. Kevin Kiernan, Carson Kurd, Sarah Gustafson, Carrie Westerbeck, Amanda Dodd, Ramyal Cabra, Mason Thompson, Jenny Alderks, Davina Durr, and Kristen Haas-Joyner. All of these people should recuse themselves, leaving Bothell's Planning Commission and City Council without a functioning quorum for the last 4 years. It's possible that legal charges could be brought to these individuals under RICO statutes. In my opinion, the council members listed above have violated their oaths of office to be impartial, as empirically evidenced by their direct violation of Bothell's comprehensive plan not the least of which is the West Hills sub-area. This may strip them of any legal protections, making them vulnerable for damage lawsuits and civil actions. Due to the reason above, conflict of interest and what appears to be collusion of the BOPOP group in violating our comprehensive plan, I submit that the DTA AHO is deficient in process and that all actions taken by the council fail to be legal due to the lack of quorum per the Bothell Municipal Code. I'm firmly against middle housing extending into our neighborhoods. I recommend all former and current BOPOP members recuse themselves or state why they believe they have no conflict of interest when they belong to an urbanist-oriented group where secret meetings may have violated the OPMA and the GMA. I am firmly against allowing 12-foot retaining walls into our neighborhoods. I recommend all former and current BOPOP members recuse themselves or state why they believe they have no conflict of interest when they belong to an urbanist-oriented group where secret meetings may have violated the OPMA and the GMA. This 12-foot retaining wall will allow larger footprints and more treescape destruction for the profit of developers to slice and dice our hills and trees to maximize
Thank you,
urban
Mr.
density
Swanson. Your time
at
is
the
up.
expense of Bothell's character.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Thank you. Next up, we have Jonathan Lowndes.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Jonathan Lowndes. I'm representing the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish Counties. I want to express our strong support for the adoption of the Middle Housing Code amendments currently under consideration, specifically option B. The urgency of addressing our affordability and attainability in housing cannot be overstated. We are facing a growing challenge in housing attainability. Option B represents a proactive and strategic approach to significantly enhance Bothell's housing capacity. Moreover, it aligns with the state legislature's intent with HB 1110. This is more than meeting immediate needs. It is about anticipating and planning for future, fostering sustainable development and a diverse range of housing and home ownership opportunities. While we appreciate the intention to increase affordable housing by mandating affordable units in small-scale projects, we have concerns about the economic feasibility of these requirements. Implementing an affordable housing mandate in projects of 4 or 6 units may not be financially viable and potentially undermining the very goals we aim to achieve. In conclusion, we urge Council to adopt option B for the Middle Housing Zoning Code amendments. This choice supports Bothell's growth, attainability, and sustainability, and positions Bothell as a leader in addressing the region's housing challenges. Your consideration of our perspective in this critical matter is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Next, we have Katrina Doan. It's online, so we'll give her a minute. Katrina, can you hear me?
Yes, it was just spinning for a bit. Good evening.
Go ahead, you have 3
Council.
minutes.
Thank you so much. Great to see all of you. I've spoken to some of you before, and welcome to the new council members. My name is Katrina Doan, and I am here to talk about a hot topic, a topic that I'm absolutely passionate about, and that is the question of what to do with fireworks within a city. You should have received an email from me yesterday about why I am so very passionate about working with cities on coming to a place of maximum peace and safety in the city during the 4th of July and times when fireworks are allowed. I mentioned a few reasons why several cities have moved to what we call a modified ban, where ground-based fireworks are allowed to be both sold and discharged. And I won't repeat the reasons for that now, but I do want to highlight a couple of communities that have made this change and the results that they have seen. In 2022, the city of Tukwila made the change from a long-held ban that they had had in the 90s The mayor, his comment as he contemplated it was, we've had a ban for 25 years. We know it doesn't work. We owe it to our residents to make a change. So they put in place a modified ban allowing the sale of ground-based fireworks. After the fireworks season, the police and fire chief did a report to council, and they were absolutely overjoyed at what they had seen. They said it was the least number of calls for service in over 25 years. There were no fireworks fires, no fireworks injuries, and perhaps the most important part, and a very special place in my heart, $45,000 was raised for nonprofits. They were so happy with that. And they know that I'm talking to many, many communities around the region. They said, please tell other communities that they are welcome to reach out to us. If they would like to talk to somebody in a like position, council member to council member, council president to council president, they said, we would love to share what a difference this has made in our community during this season. So I offer that to you, and I'd be glad to send you the contact information. The mayor has since retired, but he has said they can still reach out to me. The council president during the time the change was made is now the mayor. So they're available to you. Last year, in 2023, the city of SeaTac made the same change. And during the time that they were talking about this, the fire marshal of the Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority came and did a presentation, a PowerPoint, about the positive points of making such a change. He highlighted how these are not the items that cause the stress that people talk about. These are not the items that go boom. They're not the ones that fly around and are concerns for starting fires. He was very, very positive about the city of SeaTac making the change. I work with cities all over the region, and I would love to work with you if you feel like this is something that would be helpful for the city of
Thank you,
Bothell.
Katrina. Your time is up.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next up, we have Gary Smith.
Good evening. My name is Gary Smith. I'm a resident of West Hill. I'm here to speak on behalf of some of the silent members of our community, trees and forests. I did submit a letter to the council today and outlined my thoughts about this. I'm not going to say anything new to you. You know all of the information that I'm going to speak tonight, but I'd like to say it publicly. I think there's some pretty well-established facts about trees and their importance to our communities. I'm just going to list a few of these. Trees eat greenhouse gases that cause climate change. Secondly, trees boost our mental health while raising physical health. Trees clean the air so we can breathe more easily. Larger, older trees store more carbon than smaller, younger trees. Trees provide a home to wildlife that we love. They cool down our neighborhoods by giving us shade. And they filter our water, making our drinking supply cleaner and more reliable. It seems to me that we could possibly do better than trying to save, a minimum of 20% of our trees in our neighborhoods. I think that's kind of a target that's been set by the city. I'm hoping that the council, the planning commission will consider in making decisions in building in our city that we need to make more progress in saving our trees, forests, and green canopy. I realize you have a very difficult job in making these decisions in our community, and I applaud you for serving on the council, the planning commission, and doing the best you can for the residents of Bothell. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all I have signed up to speak tonight. However, if you'd like to speak, please go to the podium and state your name.
Hello, my name is Olive Layton. I am a Bothell community member. I attend Franklin Elementary. I would like to recognize that March is Intellectual Disability Awareness Month. In addition, March 21st is World Down Syndrome Day, and this day is important to me because my sister has Down syndrome. If you see somebody who has a disability, we should treat them with kindness and respect. We are more alike than different. If you meet somebody with a disability in the community, please treat them how you would want to be treated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, that is all I have in the audience here. I do show one person raising their hand in the virtual audience, and that is Eric Swanson, so we'll panel him in next. Eric Swanson. Eric, can you hear me? Eric, you're muted. If you can hear me, please unmute your mic. There you go. Can you hear me? Hi, Eric. Can you hear me? I don't. Eric, I'm going to call on some other people, and hopefully we can get your situation so you can actually speak. And I'm going to call and see if there's anybody else who wishes to speak while we wait. Thank you. Sorry, or anybody in the virtual audience who wishes to speak? If so, please use the raise hand function. That is all I have. Eric, how you doing? You're muted again. Eric, you're still muted. If you could unmute your mic, that'd be great. And if not, maybe you could submit your comments for the record in writing, and we'll be sure to get them into the packet.
All right.
I think we're going to move on.
I think Mr. Swanson just left.
Thank you.
Next up, under reports, is the city manager report. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I have two quick updates for you tonight, and then we're going to turn things over for a staff report after that. So we'll get ready for that as we go. The first update is a follow-on to something that the mayor mentioned in our community outreach, and that is that we are moving forward with conducting a survey to help prioritize investments for the 25-26 budget. Believe it or not only is this a comprehensive plan year, we'll be doing a lot of work throughout the rest of the year on that, but also a budget year as we plan for the next 2 years. And community feedback is a great way for us to have a snapshot of what are the things that are important to the city, and we'll use that to balance the investments that we can make and present those to council. So what I want to highlight is that postcards were mailed to homes this week. And so that is a sample size of Bothell. So when we bring back results, you're going to hear a lot about a statistically valid survey. Those postcards have been translated or presented in English and then translated into Spanish and Chinese as well. And if you do receive a postcard in your mailbox, please, please, please respond. There's a unique code just for your household that we're hoping to get your results. Again, that'll go part of our statistically valid survey, and those are due by March 24th. Now, the thing about this lottery is even if you didn't win the random sampling of being one of those households, you can still participate, and we look forward to that. So as was mentioned in the update, On our website, in our social media posts, we now have a link that is live for individuals to be able to also weigh in. And we want those results. We're going to present those as well. So we'll have a big picture of everything that we've heard. There's also going to be for those who are not online or not doing social media like your city manager, there's also going to be posters around city facilities as well as other community places with QR codes that do take people to the survey if they can take them online. We are looking for more and more voices. We also know that in addition to all of that, there's still going to be some communities that just are underrepresented any time that you're trying to do a community survey. So staff is also doing targeted outreach into the community to try and get as many voices who we don't normally hear from to participate and get good data for council. I also just want to note that I recall the information from the last survey was presented to you just before I started, but I was with you here for a budget retreat. And I remember a lot of conversation about discerning what some of the questions maybe have met. And I think we did have some binary questions in the survey a couple of years ago, or just some things where it wasn't easy to articulate of what was the response intended to convey. And so really huge thanks to our Assistant City Manager, Becky Range, and team for working with, we have a new survey vendor and really tightened up some of the questions, and we're excited to see what we hear. So again, please take the time to share with us. The second update I have is a follow-up from our last meeting, which was on February 13th. And there were two items that the council wished to initiate. And these are going to be coming back in more full detail under projected agenda reports. The first one we heard about again tonight, which is comments around what our current city code requires in terms of frontage code, which includes improvements like installation of sidewalks during redevelopment and other improvements. We've heard about scoping of utilities. Like other cities, Bothell's frontage codes were developed maybe a few years ago, and they really are intended for large subdivisions and commercial projects. And those requirements that currently exist are not necessarily suited for newer legislation that allows for single lot redevelopment, such as accessory development units or dwelling units and middle housing. Public Works staff, CD, and community development and legal staff have been discussing proposed policy code updates for a while. You saw a piece of that actually in the utilities update at the end of the year, where we had a conversation and the council adopted some small dwelling unit facility charges for hookups for utilities. So that was an effort of how do we start modernizing our code for what we're going to see. Also in anticipation of middle housing, staff had begun working on some other code changes as well. And we're really intending to bring it as a large package, but we're hearing some frequent concerns about certain items like what we've heard in the frontage code. So on April 2nd, what we're going to do is we're going to carve out some of the things that we could move quicker on, and staff will be back on April 2nd with some options for council to consider that would initiate policy updates to the existing code, including proposed timeline for council consideration. This is not seen to be something that is a years-long project. We're talking months, but will include options will include planning commission, and then also some of the changes may trigger the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA, which we sometimes talk about, which, if for those who don't know, is Washington State Department of Ecology, and when they identify any potential environmental impacts of government changes that are made. So we will bring all of that back to you on the 2nd for feedback, and then if it sounds like what council would like to see happen, we'll initiate and get to work. The other item that was discussed and requested for staff to get to work on was a review of the multi-family housing tax exemption, or MFTE program, which was first adopted by the Bothell City Council back in July of 2021. Part of the feedback that you have heard is that it has not been utilized in Bothell, which is true. That has not happened. And so while the purpose of the code has been consistent since 2021, which is to increase the supply of multi-family housing opportunities, promote community development and affordable housing, investment in public transit, and accomplish planning goals under the Growth Management Act, all noble things. Some things not working. So we are also working to scope out bringing something back for council's consideration on what that looks like. The Community Development Director, Jason Greenspan, and I will be meeting later this week with staff from Arch who consulted with the city originally. We have some questions that we want to go over with Arch around what are some of the lessons learned since 2021. I think that some of the advice that they had provided Bothell at that time was based on what was going on in other communities. So we'd like to know a little bit more about what is the results that they're seeing in some of those other communities. And we will then, from that, we'll consider what our resources are. We're going to aim for bringing something back on April 2nd as well for council consideration to see if you also want to initiate that work. But we're a bit concerned about being able to provide formal options, frankly, by April 2nd, but we are aiming for the month of April. We'd like to get that moving forward. So more to come on that. I just wanted to acknowledge both of those requests so that anyone who may not have caught council's request during the meeting knows that's something that we are working on. All right. So with that, we have an update from go ahead.
City Manager.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a quick break before we go on to there, but I just have one question for you, if that's okay.
Let's try it.
So you mentioned coming back on April 2nd with some ideas for how to modernize our code for smaller development projects. Would there be a timeline for implementation of that? Like, would that be something
Yes.
that would be implemented immediately?
It will not be implemented on April 2nd. As I mentioned, there are procedural steps. Anytime you're going to change the municipal code, there's going to be some things that we need to go through. So we will include what those steps look like and maybe some options in terms of timeline. But I don't see this as being something that is a multi-month effort, but we do want to engage potentially the Planning Commission, who is advisory to council and gives you some capacity to do other work, as well as a public hearing. And again, that SEPA review before anything would go into effect.
Okay. And would those be applicable toward people that are in process with something right now, or would those only be toward people moving forward?
We'll bring that detail back when we come.
Thank you. It is 6:56. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to come back at 8:06 p.m. 7:06. Yes. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to kick it back to the city manager to introduce our next staff report.
Recording in progress.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Mayor. So this will bring us to our staff report, which is a follow-up on some work that took place this fall. Council has requested in the past for a couple of years around options for short-term activation of what is known as Lot E, F, and G. Fortunately, there's a picture in the slides too, so if you're not familiar, you'll have a better picture of it. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Tony Call, our Deputy City Manager, and Jeannie Ash, our Economic Development Manager.
Thank you, City Manager Stannard, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members. It's a pleasure once again to be back in front of you. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Jeannie Ash, our Economic Development Manager. We had a survey done of the community around several different options for Lot E, F, and G, and we're bringing those results to you this evening. So with that, Jeannie, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor. So this is an update, a staff briefing and an update on the survey we did on the activation of Lot E, F, and G. This is a report only. There's no council action needed, but we're happy to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation. So here is a view of our what we're discussing this evening.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. We're all having mic issues.
Thank you.
We'll hear you better.
Okay, great.
Matt, would you mind closing the door? Because we're hearing like a reverb from the speaker out there, and like we're delicate. Thank you.
So, just as a reminder, this is an aerial view of Lot E, F, and G. It's a valuable piece of property. It's the gateway to our community. Sits right there on State Route 522 and Bothell Way Northeast. It is under an it's an active cleanup site. We have a strategy that's going to take 6 to 8 years to get it completely cleaned up. And since we can't activate it for another 6 or 8 years, you've asked for us to look at what we can do temporarily. So what we did is we went out and we hired a consultant, And we asked a consultant to come back to us with concepts about how to activate that site. And we asked for unique design concepts. We hired a consultant. They came back to us with 4 design concepts, and then we did a community survey. We took those ideas out to the community on a web-based survey. We had paper surveys. We did poster boards in City Hall. We also took poster boards out to a comp plan open house. And as a result, we had 1,800 responses. So very quickly, I just wanted to mention that the consultants had guiding principles for these designs. These designs must be usable year-round, have multi-purpose, be multi-cultural, thank you, and also to be accessible for people of all ages and abilities. So here are the ideas and the results. So first place is Bothell's Backyard. What that is a series of active spaces and movable furniture. Number 2 is an ice pad and summer track. So that's an ice rink in the winter and some sort of track in the activity track in the summer. Number 3 is Bothell's Front Porch, which was a series of different types of swings, which was meant to be welcoming to the community. And then also, finally, is Bothell's Outdoor Museum of Art, which would be movable panels that would be changed out every few times a year. In addition to asking our community what they like best, there was a lot of open-ended questions about each design and about activating the site overall. There were several pages of responses. I went through and read them all, and these are the themes I've identified. If you all read them, you probably identified your own themes, but what I came up with is that the community wants gathering space, and they want that gathering space to have grass and flowers and shrubs, and they want to be able to use it year-round. They're also highly interested in some sort of concept where they can have a little bit of everything. They want a hybrid option. They're also concerned about safety and maintenance. More specifically, they are concerned about vandalism, graffiti, and the chance that unhoused people might use the site. Also, parking came up. It always comes up. So, where will they park, and will parking be taken away? Our community also, too, identified gaps in the concepts that they saw. And so they want to make sure that whatever is put there is ADA accessible, inclusive, and it includes restrooms. So now that we've completed the survey and we've got the results back, what are some potential next steps? So 2 steps here. If you were to explore installation of one or more of these concepts, the very first thing we would do is engage a consultant who would come up with some sort of budget. There's no way that we can figure out what the budget is. And considering engaging a consultant, the cost of the equipment, and making the entire site usable and ADA accessible and safe, we're anticipating that it would need an RFP, and it would take 18 to 24 months until it was completely installed. That's for the entire site. So a second option would be a phased approach. Every one of the design concepts included food trucks and pop shops. And so another option might be to add additional pop shops, a food truck site pad, and ADA walkways. So that completes my presentation, and we are happy to answer any and all of your questions.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jeannie, for the presentation. I wanted to tell you that I thought you did a good job with the categories. I picked up on most of those as well. There was one more that you didn't list, but you did mention, and that was pop shops.
Yeah.
And so I was really glad to hear that that part of your recommendation to us is that there might be a phased approach. And so I guess I'm curious, what would that timeline on that phased approach be? You kind of mentioned a few different steps in that. So like, when might we expect more pop shops? When might we expect the food trucks pad? And so I'm curious to learn more.
If we were to start immediately, And because of our experience with doing this, I am anticipating that we could have them up and running in time for the holiday shopping season.
And what about the food truck pad? Would that be the same timeline?
Yes.
Cool.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. This is super exciting. And this question is a little bit of an offshoot. I remember when the survey came out, the staff was very excited because we got like 1,000 responses right away. And as maybe anybody who's followed a city survey before knows, it's hard to get responses. Do you think that that was more the subject of the survey, or are there any lessons learned about how this consultant deployed the survey that we could use to get more engagement like in the future?
I actually think it was a topic. And then also, too, our communication team did an amazing job of pushing it out at using social media. I honestly believe it was the community that wanted this.
I saw a lot of like more public discussions about it too. I get that this was perhaps something that you'd want to see yourself enjoying when you go take the survey versus maybe a drier topic. Not that we don't always talk about very exciting things, but
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilmember Curd?
Hi, thanks for the presentation, and this started before I was on council, so it's encouraging to get up to speed and learn about all the things that you've been doing in the background to get this rolling, so thank you. I have a question about the amount of permanence that the city would be looking towards in having open space. So like, I would think that pouring concrete slabs and doing things that seem a little bit more permanent, utility installations, that sort of stuff, would be kind of counter to the overall goal of the property. And when developing these different alternatives and these kind of ideas, was there any discussion about, how temporary installations would be treated?
Always. First of all, I want to note that the property itself is already, I don't know the right terminology, but there's already connection points for sewer and electricity on that property. And with regards to it being temporary, it's a huge consideration, especially since it's a cleanup site. We have to make sure that we build around the infrastructure that is in place so that we don't damage. Also, too, there is, because it is such a valuable piece of property, would like to have a conversation about how to activate it permanently. And that's a community development conversation.
Understood. Thanks.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
No. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to see a lot of progress happening with this project. I'm sure a few of us mentioned it, to staff, and it's exciting to see a space that's usually inefficiently used. Let me call it that way. To use for something that's actually better put to good use for our community, especially that 6-8 year timeline for cleanup and actually figuring out then what to do with that property, having actually a permanent solution to this property. So it's good to have a temporary one. I like you. I think your approach, the temporary approach, by the end of this year, having some activation, pop shops. It's actually multiple birds with one stone, or multiple, whatever the non-violent version of that term is. So yeah, it's a good thing. Getting more community members, more entrepreneurs coming in, more people to go and visit that site, and with accessibility thinking is a very good idea. Food trucks was the original idea. Remember when it was presented? It was the original idea, and then it evolved from that. And then, we test and learn our way into what our community likes and what doesn't like, and we can accommodate, given that it's a temporary thing, and then which is actually input to the council that will be around in 8 years to make a better decision at that time. So thank you.
Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just echo what everybody else said. Thank you for all of your work on this. I was not excited about it at first. I was thinking it's going to cost a lot of money, and is the money worth it? But knowing that it is 6 to 8 years, it's incredibly underutilized right now. Great asset within our community to activate. So I am excited about what we're looking at here. I still want to see the numbers. I still want to see what that looks like long term, but I am excited about this project. I just want to say thank you.
The first thing that I want to say right now has absolutely nothing to do with the subject matter at hand. I want to say happy birthday, Deputy City Manager Tony Call.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. What I'm hearing from council and the way that it was presented, it was like hey, do you want us to go do some of this stuff? And it seems like that was sort of assumed by everybody up here in their comments. So I would very much like to just know kind of what the schedule looks like, what we're doing, how we can get something activated. If there are things that we can do that would be, turn that into a useful space this summer, that would be amazing, even if it's not the pop shops, even if it's not, because that is going to be permitting and infrastructure and all of that. So if there's some part of that vision that could be implemented, by the summer, like that would be just to turn that space into something that's usable as soon as possible. I would love to see that. I would always like things to be done much faster than they're actually possible. So, yeah, no, I'd love to know kind of what our options are for like how much things cost, what can we do, when can we do them. That's what I'd love to see.
We can bring some of that back to you, and thank you for the good feedback on trying to move more accelerator forward. We will, at this point, the expansion of the pop shops, we've got history in that. We have, I don't, but Jeannie does. Let me be very clear. We as the collective.
We collectively do, yes.
Yeah, the broad we. We have history in getting those pop shops up and running, so I think that's probably a quicker path because we've done it before. The hardest part of that, besides the permitting and getting the sheds, is also just the process we go through to ensure that the application process, so that those who come in are prepared to do the work that it takes to be part of the program. So there's a bit of time there that we'd have to look at, but we can put that together. Go ahead.
Didn't we just go out for new pop shops?
We did. Jeannie, can you speak a little bit to that?
So as an option, yes, we did go out for new pop shops. And I cannot tell you how excited I am for the new entrepreneurs and how much I think of them in their first month. With that said, if you were to add more pop shops, one option that you may want to consider is that the additional let's say we do 4 pop shops. If you do an additional 4 pop shops, would you consider renting them at market rate? We could still put parameters around what type of concessionaire we would like to see there. We would still enter into a contractual agreement, but it would be at market rate.
We can bring that back to you.
And I'll just give a little feedback on that. What I would love to see out of those pop shops is shops that could serve people who were there, activating the space, or something that they could either consume there or use there or do something. Like if there's a way that it could enhance the usability of the space, I would love to see vendors that could do that. Like if there was an ice cream shop where people in the summertime could go get some ice cream and they could sit on the structure, like that would be super cool. And I think I care more about that than if we rent them out for money or not.
We can bring that back and talk a little bit more what that future looks like. That's probably our best path at this point.
Deputy Mayor? Yeah.
Okay.
To add on to what the mayor said and what Councilmember Mankey said, is not only the costs, but also the revenue potential, like to your point, Jeannie. My initial reaction is the whole reason why the entrepreneurs are coming to us is because there's no market, they cannot afford a market rate place, so they're coming to us to help them get there. So that was my initial reaction, but You want to look at the, the costs, and then you want to look at the revenues that are potentially the projected revenues, sales tax revenue, rental revenue, whatever it is, revenues, so you can start making that
We can do that.
assessment.
Deputy Mayor, I'll take on. I think one of the other things that goes along with that is that the Pop Shop program has been intended to be an incubator program where there is a 2-year timeline, and I think we had some feedback in your study session when we heard from the first class, but also as time ran down of it's not only a matter of not being able to afford market rate, but it's also the lack of availability of spaces that meet that need. So if council would like to consider a couple of options, if we wanted to look at it from that standpoint, I don't know that it's not primarily something we'd look at as a revenue-driven decision, but it may be in terms of expanding opportunity and what the portfolio of businesses and what we're supporting. So if we can play in that space a little bit and bring it back, and if that sounds like what you want to see, then that's where we'll put our focus.
We're riffing on ideas right now. That sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, but as a city, we have to look at sales tax revenue also, right? So if that could be an entry point into that, why not? As a discussion point, not just as a program, V2 of a program, right?
I won't be your chief economist, but I'll spoil that one for you right now. Is that won't make a blip, but that's okay.
I'm not talking about this
We'll
one.
talk about
I'm not talking about this one specifically. I'm saying in general.
Right. The other things that I just wanted to note before we wrap up this presentation is, again, I do think appropriate we celebrated with proclamations this evening around developmental disabilities awareness. And so I don't want to lose sight of the importance of the American with Disabilities Act work that would need to go to activate this space. And I do think that when we think about timelines, that's an important piece that adds time, and it's a worthy investment, even if it is for 7 to 8 years. If we're going to do it, let's do it so that we can include our entire community. And I know that's consistent with the council vision that you have. So we want to make sure we deliver a product that lives up to our word. The other thing I just wanted to note too is that, and this was part of Jeannie's materials, but just not to lose sight of the fact of that right across the highway from Lot E, F, and G, there's an incredible amount of work going on right now by our Parks and Recreation staff to look at what the future of the park at Bothell Landing is going to be. And so anything we do here in activating Lot E, F, and G in that temporary nature really is an appetizer into what the real jewel will be, which is the Park at Bothell Landing for spaces to recreate and connect. And again, Lot E, F, and G, I think of it as a lot of things, including in this temporary activation, but I know it's also a great opportunity for future connections to the park to get more and more residents who are able to go from where they may be already doing business and enjoying downtown across to the park to recreate, be on the trail, and enjoy just a great asset to our community. So wanted to leave that with some last words, but thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to our deputy mayor, because this is something that he really drove a lot, and basically got told no originally and then didn't shut up about it. And here we are a little bit later with a really cool concept. So thank you. Appreciate that. And Councilmember Dodd?
Yes, also seconding the deputy mayor, never shutting up. It's really appreciated. I wanted to say too, I appreciated the idea of a market rate or a couple of market rate pot shops, but if we leave parking, would we charge for the parking, right? Like, let's look at all the different ways that people use the space when we come back with options.
Thank you. That's helpful.
All right, next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Council members. Go fast if you want to go. Councilmember Aldrich.
Okay, I can provide do I have to go fast while I'm going?
No. I'm just not going to sit here and go like this for a long time.
We did talk about that. If we could only all just talk faster. I do have an update from the North King County Coalition on Homelessness. KCRHA, the Regional Homelessness Authority, was there to provide an update. The point-in-time count has been completed. That is the community's efforts, the county's efforts to figure out just how many people are living on the street. And so that report will be available this spring. the RHA has a new interim CEO. You might have seen that in the news. The Homelessness Authority will give us an update, and they're going to do an annual report for the King County cities that have entered into the ILA for the North King County subregion. So that is expected to be received by the cities in March. So that might be in our emails soon, or to the city manager. There was a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about hiring a subregional coordinator to help implement the ILA between the North King County cities, but that is basically frozen as a concept for now, as KCRHA continues to rework their hiring model and get their new CEO on board, and also hire a new CEO. Then we had some other updates. The winter shelter at St. Dunstan's is currently open because we've had a run of several cold nights. And so as weather changes, as we get updated weather models, it will remain open if the temperature thresholds have been met. The Oaks did also provide a shelter that is the enhanced shelter that the city of Bothell is partially funding, not all the way funding, but through our human service grants and also through our ILA with the Regional Homelessness Authority. In the first 6 weeks of 2024, the Oaks were able to move 11 people out of shelter into new apartments. And then there were 5 more move-outs scheduled by the end of February, which is like a quarter of their census in 6 weeks. And so they are really starting to see some success with this model, as people are able to come in, get stabilized, get support services, and then be able to exit into housing in the community. So it's always really, this is one of my favorite committees to attend because there's always really interesting information shared, really to see how people work together in really inspiring ways to help those who are most in need. So yeah, if anybody ever wants to be, Deputy Mayor is my alternate, but if you ever want in on it, it's really cool. So that's my update, and then I'm hoping the next time you ask me this question, I'll have updates from East Side Transportation Partnership and the Solid Waste Group. So stay tuned. I am really excited about solid waste, just so you know.
Words I never expected to hear. Next up is projected agenda discussion. Oh, Councilmember Menke.
I've got one for projected agenda.
Okay, perfect.
All right, I didn't start the fireworks discussion, but we did hear during public comment about it, so I did want to kind of bring it back for potential future projected agenda. I know we hear a lot about fireworks every 4th of July. It's a very controversial topic, but I think there was some merit to what was said. I live in the northeastern part of the city, so my closest fireworks shop now is Maltby Chapel, which is outside the city and carries probably 95% of the fireworks that are illegal in the city, but there's no markings to say that they're illegal in the city limits. So I end up having to try to understand myself what's legal and not legal to buy and explain to my kids why we don't buy 95% of the things there. If we did allow those things to be sold in the city again, the things that are legal, we would essentially be creating a fundraising opportunity for community members and creating the potential to have them be our ambassadors to our residents to explain what's available and why other things are not available. And that would increase the spread of knowledge about what's legal and what's not legal. And we may see a decrease in illegal firework usage. I can't say for sure, but it's a hypothesis and it might be one worth exploring. So I don't know if anybody on council has interest in exploring that or discussing it further, but I did want to bring it up as a potential future agenda item.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. I would heartily second that. Appreciated the Billy Joel call that you didn't start the firework discussion. And I would love to learn more about the cities cited in the letter we got and the public comment we heard about an overall decrease in illegal firework usage and just see the data there, because some kind of celebration I think would be appreciated by a lot of people.
I guess the one thing that I would say is we have a few things that are ongoing that the city manager briefed us on already that we're kind of trying to move on as quickly as possible. And I don't know if it would be feasible to get something done and legislation actually changed in time for July this year. I am interested in it mostly because of the testimony about like how it made things better on the 4th of July, because obviously we still have a significant problem with people who just completely disregard the law. So I would just, as long as I'm fine doing it. I like the idea, but I just want to make sure that it's not going to push anything else that we're working on now, because we got some pretty important stuff we're working on right now that we added recently.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the thought on that. And you're right. As we sit here on March 5th, July 4th suddenly feels soon. Not having had any discussion about it before, I would need to scope out what that looks like. I believe from council protocol we would need at least 3 council members who were interested in bringing it back. We could do some additional research like we are on the 2 other topics that we brought up tonight, and then see if the scope makes sense. Following the email that was received from the representative from TNT Fireworks that you received via email, and then tonight, I needed to refresh myself on code. So one of the things that I think just up front that will help us scope it, if there are 3, but I'll ask the question because that might help inform it, is looking at our code or reading through our code. Fireworks are allowed, the fireworks that are allowed July 1st through the 4th include sparklers, tanks, which I'm thankful is defined in code. It's not driving tanks, but you probably remember them if you were of a certain age. And then on July 4th only, it's snakes, poppers, snappers, and novelty smoke devices. So it's pretty limited on what's allowed, and I suspect that most of the council knows that more than I did. And so if the conversation is allowing just those of what would be allowed, that would be helpful to know versus also expanding. I heard in the public comment tonight from the representative some additional, what I interpreted as additional types of fireworks that we might be seeing in other communities. And I think she mentioned that Tequila expanded what was allowed. So it'd be helpful to know if council does support this, if we're talking about the current scope of what's allowed, or if there's interest in expansion, because I think that'll change the timing of how much research we have to do. Hopefully that made sense.
I'll just say that I'm uninterested in expanding the scope at all. We have just done this a couple of years ago, and I'm not interested in walking that back. And a lot of ground fireworks can get in the air, can get in bushes, can start fires. And I don't know how much appetite there's going to be for just buying those things. You know, we did those as kind of an exception for small children, basically, that could hold something. But I'm just going to go first this time and say I'm uninterested in expanding the scope of what we allow.
Can I just understand more what you were trying to get at, Councilmember Menke? Given what the city manager said, is that your request still there, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I given all that's going on right now, I would say, later this year is fine. Not doing it for this July. We're already in March. It's pretty quick. I think my main question is around reducing the number of illegal fireworks and looking at the data that was cited and figuring out, what did they do? What changed? How did it change? Is there a market for people who are fundraising to come and fundraise by selling fireworks with what we currently have on the books as legal, or is it so limited that there's just not going to be any interest there? Because if there's not any interest there, why do it? So it would probably take a little bit of work to do some research, but those are my main questions.
Yeah, I think not ahead of the comp plan and other things. I totally appreciate, the mayor's hey guys, calm down comment. But I think just understanding, especially I'm really interested in what our fire department is okay with. I wasn't on council when that vote happened, but I think that we want to respect their expertise. They see the worst fallout of fireworks, and that's a big part of why that code was enacted. So just understand if there's anything else we could expand into safely, and just even if it comes back as a staff briefing and the answer is everything's safe, we already allow, that would be that for me, but just a little more.
I think your question is, can we sell it? Can we allow, we don't allow sales in Bothell, or do we?
Correct. There's a prohibition of any sale.
But that's the question, is fundraising inside of the city limits?
It is,
Can
yeah.
we sell it pretty much in Bothell? That's the question.
There were a lot of groups that relied on these fundraisers to fund their group activities, and when we disallowed the sales, that negatively impacted them. And if we're hearing that there's data that other cities have found a way to do it, and it actually reduced illegal firework usage, which I'm actually concerned about, because I don't like getting the complaints. I get a lot of from my neighbors, and we hear from the community, and it's a problem. I feel like it might have even gotten worse since we stopped selling them in the city, and that could be because they don't know, because they're going to the local location in unincorporated Snohomish County and buying where it's legal there and it's not legal here. So I'm just looking for solutions. I'm looking for solutions to help everybody in the city, and if there is data to show that it is effective to sell what is legal, and it brings down the number of illegal fireworks, and it helps educate, because people show up and they say, where's all the aerial stuff? And it's like, well, actually it's not legal here. We're selling the legal fireworks, and if you want to light off illegal fireworks, you need to go to a place where it is legal to do that. That could be a great opportunity. But I do, I respect the work that the fire marshal has done in the past on getting what we have in place, and all the work that the previous councils have done. I just want to explore, is there something more we can do? Because we always hear the feedback from the community, and if there's an opportunity to maybe do something better, we should chase it, but not ahead of obviously like the comp plan and budget and all the other important things we need to do.
I like that. I'm good with exploring at some point in the future.
Councilmember Alders.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say while I wasn't on council when that decision was made, I did find the fire department's presentation to the community really compelling about safety and what was being recommended, and so it really was based in what was safe and what. And so I don't know if anything has changed in 2 years regarding what the fire department would recommend in terms of what, of the allowable use is. But if the fire department is able to take a look at some of these other ordinances from Tukwila and CTAC, like were mentioned, and come back to us with a recommendation of, we do think these would be safe and we could expand use, I would be open to hearing that. But I would very much want to defer to the fire department. So I don't know what you count that as, but that is my thought.
So, I mean, it's the thing for clarity. I feel like I've heard at least 3 people saying willing to consider it, which I take as come back with the scoping and more detail of what it would take, what it would look like, what we would consider, and how we would do it. If that's the case, then we can do that much work. I won't commit to which meeting we'll bring it back, but we'll bring it back in short order, but not ahead of other priorities.
And just feasibility of, like, would somebody actually start a fireworks stand with the very limited scope of fireworks that we allow? That might be question one. And if we are going to have a conversation kind of starting, and I completely agree with Councilmember Mankey around trying to reduce the number of illegal fireworks that are in the city, I'd want to have a conversation around different enforcement options as well. But I'm not proposing that right now. Just if we have the bigger conversation.
We open it up, yeah.
Yeah, I would say step one is just find out, do the people that want to sell fireworks, are they willing to sell the fireworks we allow? And if they are, then maybe we scope it from there. If not, then maybe we save ourselves some time. Sound reasonable?
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mankey. We had something to discuss on projected agenda discussion. We don't always get that. I would love to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Alders.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilmember Alders and a second from Councilmember Mankey to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Mankey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Carlber?
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Zorns absent and excused.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have our public hearing. Our first agenda bill of the night is Agenda Bill 24036, the public hearing on downtown transition affordable housing overlay and retaining wall code amendments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two public hearings, as you noted. I am going to introduce Community Development Director Jason Greenspan to just frame the conversation briefly, and he's also available to entertain any questions that council may have before opening up comment from the public. We'll then hear from the community, and then following that, while there's no formal action anticipated tonight, we will be able to respond to any further questions council may have after hearing testimony. With that, I'll turn things over to Jason.
Thank you very much, City Council members. As you might remember, on February 13th, City staff briefed the Council on suggested code amendments submitted by the Drews as part of their 2023 planning docket request. And just for clarity, the suggested code amendments are being presented as two separate ordinances based on subject matter. First, code changes to the downtown affordable housing overlay, also known as DTAHO, that will impact only properties within this overlay district. These changes generally relate to affordable housing incentives as well as height and setback standards. And second, changes to citywide development regulations that affect retaining walls. A public hearing is scheduled for this evening on both of those ordinances, and unless there are any questions at this time, the City Council can move to open the public hearing.
I'm going to open the public hearing. Actually, I didn't see any questions. Okay. Clerk, is anyone signed up to speak?
We do have people signed up to speak, yes. We actually received a number of written comments. The first one is from Chris Jones, who wrote in opposition to the proposed code amendments. Nuala Collins wrote in opposition. Laura Erickson wrote in opposition. Katie Enquist wrote in opposition to the proposed code amendments. Jennifer Skylaka wrote in opposition to the proposed code amendments. And Mark Swanson wrote in opposition to the proposed code amendments. I do not show anybody, oh, there is one lady. Oh, that's building code. Sorry. I do not show anybody who has signed up to speak.
Tonight?
Just written. But if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to do so, please step to the podium. There's nobody here but staff. And Carrie, sorry, Carrie. And I don't show anybody. Is anybody in the virtual audience that wishes to speak on this? Please use the raise hand function.
All right, in that case, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Mayor,
Nope.
excuse me, we had Connie Drews raised her hand right at the second you said that. So
Absolutely.
I'm paneling her in.
I'm opening the public hearing back up. Shazam. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Connie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
There you go. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Hi, greetings. Sorry we couldn't be there in person tonight. I just wanted to take the opportunity, especially since hearing, various people sending in opposition to the proposals. And I just wanted to reiterate once again that one of the things the most important thing that we're working on developing in this area in downtown Bothell, and the reasons why we've, requested these amendments is because we have a desire to develop a housing solution for individuals with developmental disabilities, IDD. And it's quite ironic that tonight, of all nights, was also the declaration for the month of disability awareness. So for those, and I know I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because I know there's a lot of support in the room, but for those that do want to stand up and say, yes, we need to have disability awareness on one side, but on the other side, we don't want to have a solution for housing for these individuals. It's kind of a contrary. So anyway, I just wanted to bring to attention that the significance of this hearing tonight in light of the recognition of the Disability Awareness Month. So I think it's very timely, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for all that you're doing to bring the disabilities in the forefront.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this topic? Nope.
All right, thank you. Before I close the public hearing, I too thought it was quite poetic the night that we had this coming on the proclamation, and we had somebody in public comment earlier that said something to the tune of, if you see somebody with a disability, treat them with respect. And I can't think of a better way to respect somebody with an intellectual disability than to give them a place to live on their own. And I think it's cool we're having a public hearing on this night when we heard from folks in that community. So I'm proud of everybody involved in this for doing this project. And I'm going to close the public hearing now. Everybody over on the staff side was like, he remembered. All right, next up, we've got Agenda Bill 24037, public hearing regarding the new and updated state building codes and related Bothell Municipal Code Title 20 amendments. I'm going to open the public hearing and call on City Manager Stannert to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm going to turn right back over to Community Development Director Greenspan to have some brief framing. I believe he has some context to set too, but we're prepared to, as you said, hear from the public if there are any comments about the building code. With that, I'll turn things over to Jason.
Yes, just a refresher from where we left it on February 13th and a quick update. So on February 13th, city staff provided an overview of proposed updates to the Bothell Municipal Code to reflect statewide standards regarding the International Building Code, Energy Code, Uniform Plumbing Code, and International Fire Code. These updated statewide codes are scheduled to go into effect on March 15th of 2024 in about a week, and the proposed amendments to Bothell's code would reflect these updates. As noted by city staff in February, there are pending legal developments that do not directly involve the city that may impact the March 15th statewide effective date. Staff and legal counsel continue to monitor this evolving situation to determine the potential impacts for city adoption at a future date. But for tonight, an ordinance has been prepared for your consideration and a public hearing is scheduled. So staff's recommendation is to proceed with the public hearing this evening, and the city council can now move to open that public hearing. Unless you've already done that. You might have already done that.
We've already done that, so we can just move over to the city clerk and ask if anyone has signed up to speak.
We do have one person signed up to speak, and that is Laura Scuda, who is in the lobby. So if we'll give her a minute to come on in.
Did he? Good evening again. I'm Laura Escudé, West Hill resident. Very briefly, I understand that there are some codes, that a state code that needs to be updated, but I have some concerns. One of the first concerns that I have reading the proposed code is some of the credits and how the code is developed. It doesn't differentiate developers versus single resident families. So the way that they are counting the credit is not very clear about how it's going to be applied in the proposed ordinance. So mainly because some of the components to the energy code are only available on certain bulk numbers where the developers get a good cut. So I have very concerns about the increase of cost per square footage for private residents and adult family homes. That will be that one way. So somehow if the city code can work some sort of waivers to provide certain credit to single families or adult homes or people that want to update those codes. So so for instance, so I'm just, we can work together and volunteering for that. The other concern that I have going through the proposed code is some of the adult homes and schools and businesses don't have any consideration for AC units. AC units have become no luxury from the old days because it's just the need. Because people with disabilities like my daughter, there is a real requirement right now, and I don't see that is a clear credit or some sort of informant that adult homes are required to have those air conditioning units. We all know, unfortunately, in the few 5 years, that there are some time of the months in July and August that people cannot be going outside. So this is for health issue. And again, I am willing to work with the city and get some feedback and see how we can implement those portions of the code. And again, thank you so much for your hard work. And that's a pleasure always to live in Bothell and see how involved the community is here. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. That is all I have signed up. If anybody else wishes to speak, please step to the podium, state your name.
All right, in that case, I am going to close the public hearing, and we are going to take another break before our next agenda item. Let me make sure. Yes, before our next agenda item, we are going to break for 15 minutes. We're going to come, it's 7:56. We're going to come back at 8:01. All right, next up, we've got Agenda Bill 24038, Adoption of Middle Housing Code Amendments. Kick it over to City Manager to get us going.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is the one set of ordinances and resolutions for consideration tonight. I want to, for clarity for the council and for the community watching, I just want to note we did have a technical issue with publishing of the packet of there are a number of exhibits, I think it's A through G, within the ordinance that is up for adoption tonight that did not publish. Staff have confirmed that they have all been made publicly available in the past and are unchanged from past versions. What we are going to be doing tonight, though, is that our Deputy City Clerk will be able to share each of these exhibits. We will, the Community Development Director will acknowledge what each exhibit title is, and then can scroll through them. If the council has any questions about them, we'll of course answer as well. But just want to note again, there's no proposed changes from anything that was heard in the public hearing or displayed previously in a packet on this. So we do apologize for the technical error, and we'll be looking at what the root cause of that was. The other thing I want to note about this item is that on February 13th, our Community Development Director was before you to give a staff update to bridge what was coming forward. In that conversation, there were questions and concerns raised around the scope of what is allowed for middle housing and some questions around how we can both meet the desired future for Bothell as well as recognizing the state law requirements that have gone into effect since this process started. In that, council asked the staff to prepare two alternatives. And so in your package tonight is 3 options, A, B, and C. A has been the staff recommended option that has been before you starting in June with a study session and a public hearing. B addresses, there was a question around looking at the middle housing code and being able to essentially what would it take to move up to be a tier 1 city. And so there's information presented about that. And then option C, there was also a question of moving forward essentially with something analogous to what the Planning Commission had been contemplating before state law change. So there are 3 options in front of you. To add, I don't know if there's any additional flavor to add to that. I may have taken all of Jason's points, but Jason Greenspan is with us to answer questions as we move through it and also to navigate us through the attachments as Robin displays them. So with all of that, I'll turn it over to Jason to kind of orient us around what's in the ordinance.
Sure. The only other thing that I would add is under option B, there is also a resolution that's included in your packet that would be potentially part of that action if you selected option B. I'm happy to work with Laura now to scroll through just the main sections of the exhibits and just read out the titles, and then however much time, Laura and Eileen, you feel is necessary to include for screen time, I'd leave it up to you. This first section, Exhibit A, speaks to the updated definitions that we would be including in the Bothell Municipal Code. There are a variety of strike-throughs and additions to this section. You can, I guess, keep scrolling until we get to the next section.
As we're scrolling, I'll also note for council for your tracking in the working copy that was emailed to you by the city clerk today. From what I understand, that these documents are available if you're having a hard time keeping up.
Yes, Exhibit B is our residential permitted use table that's included in the Bothell Municipal Code, and this has, again, certain strike-throughs and additions to clarify how middle housing would be regulated in each of these zones and permitted. Exhibit C speaks to affordable housing and how the code would reflect the requirements for affordable housing based on certain density requirements. Exhibit D is area dimension and design, also known as bulk requirements, that speak to minimum lot size, average lot size, and setbacks as well when it comes to middle housing. Exhibit E relates to parking, loading, transit access, and pedestrian circulation. Exhibit F relates to specific downtown sub-area regulations. And finally, Exhibit G relates to subdivisions and preclusions for associations to limit middle housing. That's essentially the full scope of the exhibits included as part of the ordinance.
All right. Council, any questions? Councilmember Mankey?
Thank you, Mayor. One question, Community Development Director, on the AB itself, the way it's written, it looks like it's saying that a minimum development density on all lots zoned for residential use, and it's saying that a minimum is going to be 2 dwelling units on all other lots. That should say maximum, shouldn't it, rather than minimum?
I would have to pull up the page that you're referring to. I mean, the goal is essentially to say that there's an allowance up and an adjustment to the density requirements in those zone districts that would allow for the density that HB 1110 permits. So it's not intending to require a minimum number of units before you can even build.
Okay, that was my understanding too. It just looks like in the in the AB itself, under option A, it's written in such a way that says you have to develop at minimum two units on a lot.
Yeah, I tried to use that kind of terminology to explain the intent. Maybe I had a misfire there, but I think that the code itself makes it clear that you could do up to a certain amount, but you don't have to do that minimum in order to develop at all.
Okay. Great. That was my only question. That was my understanding, but I just wanted to make sure.
Sure.
All right, I'm just going to go because nobody else is going, and just say, hey, when we started this process a few years ago now, I think before the state started their first version of this that failed, we were going through a process with our community talking about 4 units by right citywide. And what we're doing here is not that. And we have promised that to our community. We've had dozens of public, I think 35 or something, public engagement opportunities where we have told our community this is what we're going to do. And I feel that we owe it to our community to follow through on what we've told them that we're going to do repeatedly. So I'll be supporting option B tonight, which is adopting these as required. And then I'm hoping that we can get to a place where we can follow through and do what we have promised our community to do as soon as possible. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I like that option. I think option B is a good option where it meets the minimum that as required by the state, and then it's up to us to do more. City of Bothell is a very highly desirable place for people to live and move into, and we need to accommodate this this need as soon as possible. I have a question about the June timeframe, June 2025. Is that the maximum? Is that like the minimum time range, or can it be? Is that the maximum? Can it be come to us sooner than this?
Well, we consulted with public works staff as well as our consultants helping us with our comprehensive plan to help us understand what the timeline would be to assess the impacts of an updated code for a more, I think, a density that would match a tier 1 type city when it comes to middle housing. And I think we felt that 6 months provided sufficient time. If we find that we can produce something faster, we will certainly be at City Council sooner than June 2025.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Is there any chance we can start that 6-month window before December?
We will be able to scope out the project and I think in all likelihood know what our consultant teams will be available to do in advance to get as much of a head start as possible. But I think in the order of business, it would follow the comprehensive plan adoption date, which is also in December. So we can lay the groundwork for beginning. So I would say that the work is not going to wait until January 1 to begin.
Okay.
We will be laying the groundwork in advance of January 1.
Okay, so we could theoretically adopt something immediately after January once the comp plan is done. It's just a matter of having the staff and consultant time to be able to do that work?
Yes, we need the time to assess impacts and update some modeling assumptions and results from a land use and a transportation perspective.
Okay.
And we felt that 6 months was sufficient time, but we will be scoping out that work well in advance of January 1, so it's entirely possible that it won't take 6 months. Our goal is to deliver it to you as soon as we possibly can.
That would make my heart soar.
And for council clarity, the work that would be directed, as the director mentioned, is part of a resolution that's in your packet related to option B, and the elements that would be included that you would be directing staff to do tonight is on page 186 of your packet. There's items A through F, culminating with that future zoning code amendments and a timeline suitable for consideration to the council by June 2025.
And, Councilmember Alders.
Before you run off on us, Jason, I'm hoping that I can get another question answered.
Sure.
So first I want to say that it makes a lot of sense to me that we would come into compliance with the state law. That seems like a bare minimum that we should do. And then, but I really do like this option B of having the housing action plan to be considered as an addition to that, recognizing that there is more work to do in the city beyond middle housing. And so my question is, I see mention of HB 1110 in here, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Enhanced Senate Bill 1220, is that also part of the housing action plan scope?
Absolutely. The housing action plan would be the natural outgrowth of the comprehensive plan update and the housing element in particular. The goal being for implementation strategies to meet 1220 requirements. And this will be part of that, but not the only part of the housing action plan. I think that housing action plan will likely extend on other elements beyond this particular component of middle housing, but we'll prioritize this component first.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the housing action plan is kind of holistic, looking at housing and how we need to take action, one, to comply with recently passed state laws, but also to address the scope of the problem that we see in our community, that there is just not enough housing. And so I just want to make sure that any housing action plan that is brought to us and that you guys are scoping your work for, that it is actually holistically addressing and looking at housing in general, and not just, are we doing middle housing, are we doing affordability? So are we looking big picture in this housing action plan, or is it really specific to recent state law changes?
It will be big picture. 1220 obligates us to plan for all economic segments of our community. So we'll be looking at how to provide reasonable housing opportunities that can be built for all area median income brackets. And that includes how we be addressing some of our middle housing requirements in the direction from City Council. That's a component of a much larger holistic approach, absolutely.
Great. That makes me happy to hear. So I know that you have a lot of work cut out for you, and while the mayor might want you to hurry it along, I also want to make sure that it's done well and done right. So thank you.
I've got a quick question that is on a somewhat related topic. We have in the past expressed interest in eliminating parking minimums citywide in Bothell. And City Manager, we were going to talk at one point in time about what the appropriate vehicle was going to be for that. The last time I brought it up, I was told the comp plan wasn't the appropriate vehicle for that. Would this be a way in which we could accomplish that goal if there was not a vehicle by which we could accomplish it sooner?
Not sure that I track, but I don't know. I don't think a housing action plan is where you would talk about parking minimums. I think what I expressed to you is that I don't think that a comp plan amendment is required to address parking minimums, was what I had conveyed. Jason, is there anything we can do here?
I think the thing that occurs to me is that we can certainly look at legislation that was recently passed, like 1220 and 1110, to see and ensure that we remain in compliance with some of the incentives provided in those bills when it comes to parking. We can also assess what the cost of parking is as part of housing in general. We want to make sure that we're reducing the burden and the cost burden to build housing and to live in housing. So I think it can be part of it, but I don't know that a full parking analysis of the city's code requirements would be part of a housing action plan, but I do think we would factor parking in as part of the cost to build and to live in housing.
Okay.
And just for clarity, Jason, would then, if the council wanted to have a separate discussion about parking minimums, maximums, what have you, would that be a code amendment, or what? How would that come forward if that was something they wanted to initiate?
It's likely that the transportation element of the comprehensive plan will be daylighting implementation strategies, and one of those implementation strategies will be revisiting the citywide parking requirements, and that can be a step as a follow-up to the adoption of the comprehensive plan. We can prioritize that as an action item.
Thank you.
So there's no way we could accomplish that this year? That's something we have to wait until January 2025 to begin working on?
Based on the comp plan process right now and resources, yes.
Okay. Could we, as part of the housing action plan, eliminate parking minimums for the types of housing that we are talking about? Would that be in scope?
We could look at the impacts of that and consider that as one of the options.
Okay, so that would be an option that would be available for us to adopt in June of 2025.
We would assess the alternatives, see what the impacts of that would be, and come to you with our recommendation if that's the direction you're looking to go in.
Okay. So if we wanted to do that, would you need us to amend or make just a motion to include that in the housing action plan?
I think it's the direction you're giving me now. We will make sure that we include that as part of the scope, which we would be coming back to you in December.
Okay.
To ensure that we're looking at parking minimums and maximums as part of housing in general. It's really up to you as to whether you'd want to amend the resolution, but I'm certainly assuring you I'm taking that feedback.
Mayor, I would recommend, either to verbally amend the resolution, then we'd have to get a clean copy. I think also in the motion, if you say that you would be moving, if option B is the option you want to do, you would want to first, we'll adopt the ordinance that's presented as option A and then follow up with the resolution. That would be option B. And I think in your motion, you could include that you would, in addition, or within the scope of the housing action plan, that you would want to see that. So I think you can do it in the motion, and we can.
And then the outgrowth of the transportation plan, how would we best instruct you to begin that work as soon as possible if we wanted to do that?
So as an immediate next action step after the comp plan?
Well, my question is, if we wanted to have the conversation and look at eliminating parking minimums in Bothell, what is the vehicle to do that with, and how can we instruct you to do that work?
So I think if I'm following what Director Greenspan just said, is that you can initiate that as an action step coming out of the comp plan. Next week is the study session to talk about the transportation element.
Okay.
So hearing from all of the council on if that's something that you'd like to see would be well shared in that study session. And I think we can figure out then how to come back and show that as a commitment, which is, I think, what you're after.
Perfect.
I will note, just for council awareness of that, kind of tracking in my head of what those immediate action steps are, where that would put us at 3. We've proposed looking at the downtown as an immediate action step. We proposed now the housing action plan that it would be minimum parking. So it could be that we have to have the conversation then too of, as we look at that, it could be part of budget conversations. I think there'd be some consideration, and also making sure that if there's any other ideas that we get those surfaced, so you can consider your full menu and not kind of go one at a time. But I think that's what we would do.
And if it's a resource conversation, please just let us know what we need to do to get our goals accomplished, so that we can do them and things can happen in a reasonable time frame.
Certainly, and there's always, sometimes resources means that we need additional bodies or additional money for consultants. Sometimes it also just means that there's a time, because there's compounding decisions on there. So that's something that we would inform too, of just really, again, of thinking about where, if you start with one, what does that do? So we'll hear you. You're looking at how do we get this done quickly, and we'll try and figure out what that looks like.
Okay. Well, we'll have that conversation then next week in the study session, and obviously the rest of council can weigh in at that point in time as well. Perfect. Yeah, go.
Just a clarification question about the comp plan. I know they're all interrelated, so I don't mean to. Are we going to look at 1220 as part of the comp plan update by the end of this year also, or is that going to be only considered with the housing action plan?
It will be both. Our comprehensive plan must consider compliance with 1220 this year, and the land use assumptions, transportation assumptions, and housing assumptions will reflect 1220, as will the housing action plan moving forward beyond that.
So some of the work will be done this year then?
Yes.
We don't have, okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion if somebody would like to make a motion. Oh, Councilmember Dodd, sorry.
Thank you. I move that we adopt both the proposed ordinance and the proposed resolution laid out in the agenda as option B.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councilmember Mankey.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be supporting the motion tonight. Option A, staff has done a lot of work, a lot of good work over the last few years. Prior to staff taking over the work, a lot of planning commission work with staff. We are in compliance with state law, which is great. A lot of community outreach, a lot of conversation around this topic. A lot of people have become comfortable with the idea of middle housing in our community and not fearing it, as it was talked about previously. I think with option B, my biggest concern is that it would require a lot more staff work over many more months, and they're already very stretched in terms of their resourcing, and there's a lot more public engagement that's required that goes along with that. I think there's other things that I would like to see our city work on and put attention to. Middle housing itself, I do like it. I was unsure at first, but as I learned more and did a lot of research, also read this this nifty middle housing book that is kind of seen as the Bible of middle housing by Daniel Paralek. Attended some master builders and some realtors sessions on middle housing, did the tour, talked to a lot of people. I realized it's out there already. I actually lived in some middle housing growing up with my father, which was something I never thought about before. And middle housing fulfills a need in the community. It's not what everybody wants, but it is a space for people who want a smaller unit or potentially cheaper unit or something that they could live in transition or downsize to. There's a lot of reasons why middle housing is important in our housing stock. So I'm certainly not against middle housing in any way, shape, or form. I think one concern I do have with it is, it's actually mentioned in this book, oddly enough, they state, though urban infill and redevelopment is becoming increasingly common, it is also more costly and requires large scales of development to be financially feasible. So we're hearing about that already from residents who are trying to do it, frontage improvements, requirements of code and size and everything else that go along with it. And that's going to result in not a lot of middle housing. And as I said, it's just not economically feasible in a lot of cases, unless you have a lot of money that's in cash or you want to go and get a 7% construction loan. And if you assume, a really low price of $400,000 to construct it and a 7% loan, you're looking at a $2,660 payment over 30 years, which ends up costing you more than $1 million, which is not really feasible. If you're going to rent that out, you're not going to get $2,660. If you're building it for a family member, that's a big price to pay for that. I don't think a lot of people can afford that. So I do have a lot of concerns about the economics of it. We also heard from Mr. Banneker tonight from the realtors talking about the best thing we can do is increase supply in our community. And I think that's where we're going to see impact. Middle housing, we'll see a little bit here and there. We've got some surrounding communities that are already not seeing very much of it. But if we were to do things like extend the urban growth boundary just a little bit, from where it was set 30 years ago, we're going to see a lot more. And you have to see the economics. The economic facts are that when you increase supply and it comes in balance with demand, prices stabilize. If you have more supply than demand, prices drop. So I think that's the better way to go. Putting our efforts in those baskets, we're going to see a lot more than trying to increase more of what we're already looking at with option A. I think it's just a lot of time spent, a lot of effort spent, and the return just isn't there. And for that reason, I can't support option B tonight. I would love to pass option A, but I don't think I'm in the majority on that one. So just wanted to put my reasons out there, let everybody know that I like middle housing again, and my reasons for not voting for option B are not because of that.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks. I didn't know it when I moved to Bothell that I would spend a sixth of my life learning and discussing and having communications with people in my community about middle housing, but here we are. And I totally understand the economic impacts that the state code does put forward. It's not buildable under state code. And so why would we throw away the years of planning construct that the city is engaged in without looking at how we can implement? And the way that we can implement is by scaling it up. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to with an option B, utilizing a housing action plan to go further, to look at it a little bit deeper and to understand what makes it tick economically from a pro forma. We want it to make sense financially, we want it to make sense for our community, and we want it to make sense for sustainability of our housing stock. So that's why I'm supporting option B for the exact same reason, because economically, option A just doesn't cut it. So thanks.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thanks. I wanted to throw one thing out there. I appreciated the talk about the urban growth boundary. One thing that came up tonight in public comment is our tree canopy. And if you look at a map that includes trees, like a satellite map, there are so many more trees outside the urban growth area. And the second we expand that, those are lost. The infill development we can do and the more we can do, like with option B, is going to protect our environment that much more. So I understand the boundary is old. I just worry that we haven't used the land inside it well yet. And we can't go backwards. Once you put sewer in, once you take down older trees, they're gone forever. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I agree with Councilmember Curd on increasing the number of units to what we've researched for the past few years, because we, as our timeline said, this started with our comp plan in 2015, which is just wild to think about. My kid was born in 2015, and now he's got a lot of attitude as a second grader, so it feels like a long time. But yeah, I'm excited to hopefully see different options that we'll study through the resolution, hopefully make it more economical for folks, in addition to the work that's being done by our Public Works Department to help with some of the frontage stuff that we've heard about. So I'm very hopeful, and I appreciate our staff coming up with options that get us in compliance with state law, which is very key, and also get us to what we've kind of been talking about for my second grader's entire life. Thank you.
I guess the one thing that I would add is that I absolutely agree with Councilmember Mankey that most of what we're making legal tonight is not economically feasible to build, which is, I agree with Councilmember Curd, exactly why we should do more and we should scale up and we should do a housing action plan. I don't know how feasible it would be through that housing action plan to look at what is economically feasible to build at scale in Bothell, and make sure that we do that. Is that work that could happen as part of that, or would we just be adding time for no good reason?
We hadn't really anticipated a full economic analysis and feasibility. However, I think that makes sense to include that as part of the scope, and that's great direction. And when we come back in December, should this option pass, we would make sure that is scoped and look at how to resource that as well. Okay. I don't know how much time that might add, but we would be really transparent about that if it would be time consuming.
Okay, fantastic. No, I'd really like to know what could get built, because the point of any of this is to make meaningful differences in people's lives. And if we don't do something that results in projects getting built, then we don't do that. That wasn't a question. Thank you. Councilmember Dodd?
Oh, don't run away, Jason. Sorry. Can we really marry that analysis with looking at what Public Works is doing, looking at what we require of smaller projects where it's oftentimes like a homeowner or someone trying to figure out something for their family? So I don't know what that looks like. I'm just envisioning subject A wants to add an ADU, or just ways we can reduce the whole cost of the project. Because I think sometimes I struggle with how segmented the updates can be, and we look at different code updates from different departments, and then it's like, in a whole project, what does all this kind of cumulatively come to? So when we look at the economic analysis, can we see some of the options that we're going to hear about on the other topics included in that, to be like, okay, if we reduce this requirement, it would reduce a project, like an example project, by like this amount. Does that kind of make sense?
It does make sense. The last thing we want to do is have a regressive policy that really impacts the viability of construction, especially as it relates to people that are really spending an inordinate amount of their household income on housing costs. So we would certainly include the full scope in that analysis.
I want to, just for clarity too, of what I think I heard, so that would be with the housing action plan scoping, in terms of the work that's initiated that we're going to bring back here for some of the more short-term things. I think what I understand is we still want to continue moving forward with those. If council were to do that, what you're asking is that following that and into the economic analysis, then it would be what's the impact of the project. But again, I think be helpful to have the discussion about what all is included currently now, some of the changes that could be made to reflect the current situation, but also recognizing that the cost will be borne somewhere. And again, when we say, well, the city will do it, that the city is the people who live in the city too. So we'll try and make sure that that's very clear, but we'll continue moving forward with what was initiated. And as the director just mentioned, we'll look at those options holistically through the housing action plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make sure that we have because most of us up here aren't adding on to our homes. We're not in construction projects. We're not in construction as our jobs, right, professionally. So I think just helping us understand all the costs of a project, if we're looking at the economics and like what kind of zoning can actually encourage things to happen versus you start to go look at it and you're like, oh no, that's way too expensive. So just helping to paint that full picture.
And I just have one question, Councilmember Dodd. In your resolution or in your motion, I don't remember you doing the first part, which is adopting the middle code zoning amendments. Did she do that? Okay, perfect. I just missed that then.
I did for the microphone.
Ordinance and resolution is what I heard.
Oh, ordinance, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That was the word. Awesome. All right, City Clerk.
For option B, please say yes or no when I call your name. Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
No.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-1 with Councilmember Menke dissenting and Councilmember Zorns absent and excused.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 24039, Board and Commission Interview Process. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As you may be aware, the application period for board and commissions did close earlier in February. As staff has now validated, making sure that applicants met eligibility. I think it left us with 51, maybe give or take. There might have been a couple of people who have dropped out. Applicants. As noted in your agenda packet, we do follow the council protocol, which would include interviewing all applicants and giving them 5 minutes each. So we've talked a lot about doing the math tonight. Doing the math, we'd be looking at over a 6-hour meeting, which may not be a great incentive for people to come in. So we've brought in an alternative, and Laura Hathaway, our city clerk, is going to talk to you about what that would be and then see how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. Yes, so we have 51 eligible applicants for the 14 vacancies across the city council board and commissions, appointed board and commissions. So because we have so many, which is lovely, option A would be to appoint a subcommittee of no more than 3 members to review applications and make recommendations to the full council regarding which applicants to review or to interview. The issue with that is that we do have a very tight timeline with that because we advertised that the appointments would be made the interviews would be March 19th. So if we were to stick to that schedule, council would really have to vote on the subcommittee, interview, decide who they want to interview, bring it back to the full council for approval, and then we would reach out to those people by the 19th. And so that's a tight week here because we'd have to come back with your recommendation on March 12th. However, we could push the interviews out a little bit, but we do want to have plenty of time for the board and those appointed to get onboarded and for IS to reach out to them and get their email accounts set up, for the staff liaisons to meet with them. And, it takes a little bit of time before their term actually starts. So the other option is to keep the process as is for 2024 and add a special meeting on March 26th to continue interviews. So it will interview as many as we can, half on the 19th and half on the 26th. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Alders?
I don't have any questions because I think it's pretty straightforward, the recommendation to form a subcommittee. And I know that I'm not a huge fan of 6-hour meetings or having to conduct interviews over 2 separate meetings as well. So I am happy to move forward with option A. I don't know if you want me to, I figured there could be more discussion about it, but I'd be happy to motion for option A, and I would volunteer to be one of those subcommittee members, recognizing that the timeline between now and next Tuesday is completely doable to put together a short list that we could present to council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curd?
I would second that motion and also indicate my interest in participating in a subcommittee.
My hypothetical motion. We can make it real.
Okay. I move to continue with option A, which is to I move a subcommittee be formed.
Choose a subcommittee.
And to produce a short list of candidates to interview. And
I will second that.
Okay, great.
And then you can continue with your comments.
No, that's great.
Oh, I thought you had more to say. I'm sorry.
Well, we, at some point in time, need to figure out who the subcommittee is going to be.
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out who the subcommittee will be, and
We have to pass the motion, and then we can figure out who the subcommittee has on it.
Great.
cool.
Okay. Perfect. Do you do the roll call vote from there?
It's not allowed.
Oh.
I can.
What's not allowed?
I'm joking. I'm sorry.
What?
You do not have to walk across.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none. City Clerk?
Thank you. Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Alders,
Yes.
Councilmember Curd,
Yes.
Councilmember Menke,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 6-0. I think I got them all. Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Zorns absent and excused. So now we'd like to decide on who the 3 would be for the subcommittee.
Councilmember Dodd?
Just a wild idea, given that this format isn't always great for timeliness. Just raise your hand if you want to be on the subcommittee, and then we can go from there. Do you have time in the next week to do this work? So you two probably want to raise your hands.
Sure.
I haven't half raised my hand, but I'm happy to step down if someone else wants to do it. I'm looking at you, Ben.
I see 3 hands.
I would love to do it. I just, in that short notice, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I'm happy to have you do it if you are willing.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
We don't need a motion to confirm that, right?
So
Do we need a motion to
Councilmember Curd,
establish?
Councilmember Alders, and Councilmember Dodd.
Correct.
We would prefer if we do have a motion just to keep it clear.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to move that we appoint council members Curd, Alders, and Dodd to the subcommittee to produce a list of applicants for board and commission interviews.
I will second that motion.
All right, I've got a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Alders to appoint Councilmembers Dodd, Alders, and Curd to the subcommittee. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 6-0 with Councilmember Zorns absent and excused. Thank
you. All right, next up, we have a study session. So let's go down there.
I got it.
City Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have one study session tonight, and it's a substantial one. So we're looking forward to getting this to council tonight. As we've had some discussions, and it'll be part of the presentation tonight. Not often do you have a large service that affects, I'll say most individuals who, if not all individuals who live or work here in Bothell, that then is a decision that has a lasting legacy of 10 years. But believe it or not, solid waste is one of those things. So tonight, what we want to do is to get council up to speed, because the next time this is going to be before you will be with a contract for consideration. So giving you context of what that could be in that contract starts with what we are out in the market to look for. With that, and to guide you through the conversation and to answer questions is our sustainability coordinator, Emily Warnock, who is the lead for this project.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, and good evening, all. As the city manager said, I'm Emily Warnock, Sustainability and Engagement Coordinator, and I'll be sharing an update on our solid waste contract procurement process with a little bit of background, a timeline of what's to come over the next several months, and then we'll move into an overview of the request for proposals and proposed updates from our current contract. So we decided to conduct a request for proposals with the goal of finding the best package of service and rates for our community, and really want to make sure that it's the most competitive, fair, and equitable way to go about finding that. So we'll talk through the details of what that process entails here in a moment. So to give you a quick overview of our solid waste contract history here in Bothell, we previously had a contract with Waste Management that ran through 2014. We went through a competitive process, much like the one that we're undergoing now, and Recology took over the contract in 2015. That contract was extended then for 3 years and expires on June 30th, 2025. So as you can see, the process to determine a new hauler contract does take some time. We started with city staff and our consultant developing a draft RFP and contract to provide area haulers with a baseline of services that we want in our community. It is important to note that while we've developed a base contract and RFP, details of the final contract will be determined after we receive proposals. So the draft RFP and contract have gone through internal review. There's also time for the waste hauling industry to provide review before the official release of the RFP, and that's in part to make sure that the services we want can actually be met within the industry. Comments, including those from the study session here tonight, will be addressed before the RFP is officially released, which is scheduled for March 21st. And then proposers have through April 11th to ask any questions before final proposals are due on May 9th. At that point, we will put together an internal committee who will review and score the proposals that we receive based on set criteria, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. And then we'll provide council with an overview of the proposals and the internal committee's scores with a recommendation in June or July. So we're aiming to wrap up the process in July of this year, and that's to leave time for mobilization before the contract starts in July of next year. Mobilization time leaves haulers the opportunity and the time frame that they need to get ready to service our community, and that includes things like ordering new collection trucks, which is taking much longer than it used to due to supply chain issues that are lingering. One other thing to note here is there is a quiet period between industry review, which is happening now, and the recommendation to council in June or July, where haulers shouldn't be reaching out to council. So, of course, a key component in deciding what services we want to be included in the next contract is community input. So we put together a short survey to gauge satisfaction with current service, what elements are most important to customers, and then what services they actually utilize and want. The survey was sent out by postcard to a random sample of households, so residential customers as well as businesses. And that was to gain a representative snapshot here. Overall, we found that about 91% of respondents reported being satisfied with current service overall. And then we had several themes that we saw in the results. Many customers currently like the services that are offered. For example, more opportunities to recycle special items conveniently. Overall, the community reported valuing reliability, cost, and customer service, which will play into our proposal criteria and evaluations later on. We also heard that customers would like more convenient options for disposal of bulky items. That's things like mattresses, appliances, and furniture. Additionally, expanded curbside collection and drop-off of items. And extra compost collection came up as well to better accommodate things like yard cleanups, storm debris, and fall leaves. So with that background in mind, we're asking for council confirmation on proposed continued programs, proposed alternatives included in the RFP, and criteria weighting that will play into the proposals for hauler selection. Really, we're looking for anything that doesn't meet your expectations, doesn't align, anything that's missing. So comments on these 3 areas will be incorporated into the process and will be used to guide internal review committee scoring and the final recommendation ultimately. Okay, so many of the elements that we are looking for in our new contract would continue from the current contract that we have. So I've listed the key ones here. That includes hauler-provided customer service, billing, and mailers. It also includes weekly collection for single-family customers with the cost of recycling and composting embedded in garbage rates. It includes a variety of recycling options for residential customers beyond what goes in recycling bins. Embedded recycling for commercial and multifamily customers. Service at city facilities and at community events that we hold. Continuation of the low-income senior and low-income disabled discounts, and those would match our water, sewer, utility discounts. Site visits to all multifamily properties and educational outreach to multifamily and commercial customers. And community drop boxes during inclement weather, so be it snow, ice, extreme heat. That would provide an option if service is suspended for an extended period of time. So along with the continuing services, we've included a number of enhancements that we would like to see in the next contract. First, the proposed term of the contract is 10 years rather than the current 7 years with 3 one-year extensions. The idea behind that is knowing that the contract is longer will lower proposed rates overall. And on top of that, extensions are nearly always exercised. We've also added requirements for all electric support vehicles. So that includes vehicles used by route managers, outreach staff, and others. When it comes to the actual collection trucks, electric collection trucks aren't currently feasible, but we've also built in a period to reassess that. Technology is advancing quickly, so we will reassess their feasibility along with other options like hybrid electric, hydrogen fuel cell, compressed air, solar, and others determined by the city about halfway through the contract. Free bulky item collection, as you heard from the community survey, also comes up frequently as a request. So we've added free pickup of up to 2 bulky items per customer per year. And lastly, to address the yard cleanups that we mentioned, fall leaves, storm debris, we would like to see free pickup of up to 3 compost extras each year per customer. Along with the changes I outlined in the base contract, the RFP will include a number of alternatives for haulers to propose rates separately. We'll then be able to see how much providing these services will add to customer rates overall. So the first is embedded multifamily and commercial compostables, up to 2 carts serviced weekly, which could help encourage customers to improve composting as well as waste diversion. A store with customer service and special item drop-off is also included as an alternative, and that's to help ensure a competitive process here. Not all area haulers have implemented something like this. Additionally, we have inclement weather credits proposed. That's to address missed service due to things like snow and ice. And under this alternative, the credits would kick in after the first week of missed service. And then lastly, for the alternatives here, we currently have 8 hours per month of community cleaning services written into our contract, which is things like pressure washing, litter pickup, and graffiti removal. And again, that's not something that's offered by all haulers, so we've included it here in the alternatives. Okay. Finally, after we receive proposals, our internal review committee will assess them based on set criteria with about 60% of the scores, or with 60% of the scores determined by rates, which are expected to increase here fairly significantly. And then the other 40% is determined by qualitative criteria like customer service, outreach, sustainability, and more. So the priorities from the community survey do play into both sections here as well. So staff will be back in June or July to present a recommendation to council determined by this criteria weighting that we're looking at now. All right, that gives you an overview of the direction we're headed as far as continued services, enhancements, RFP alternatives, and the proposal evaluation weighting. Happy to answer any questions, and we also have our consultant, Jeanette Jurgensen, here on hand to assist.
Hi, this is really interesting, and I'm excited about garbage. So thanks for coming tonight and having time. Yeah, this side of the table is excited about garbage maybe more than the other. Anyway, I have 2 things that I came into the presentation wondering about, and one of them was education and outreach, especially with surface water management here and behavior change campaigns that rely a lot on garbage practices, such as encouraging commercial and multifamily to close the lids on their garbage cans, and then also pet waste, throwing it in the trash, not the compost or recycle. So I'm wondering, the education components of the RFP, were those kind of consistent with what is currently happening, or were there kind of carve-outs or expectations for a future RFP that would change that?
Most of the cities that have gone through the RFP process have a similar weighting where 60% is based on rates and 40% is on customer service, sustainability, and items like that. Each city is a little bit different in what they pick for their qualitative criteria in weighting, but generally it is the 40-60 split.
Okay.
And to expand on that, we do have for multifamily outreach included currently in the drafted materials, annual check-ins with all multifamily properties. And then for commercial, again, we have consistent check-ins with commercial businesses to help provide education and outreach. And then to supplement that, of course, we have our programs that we offer here at the city. So we have several programs focused on education and outreach to the different sectors here. Regarding things like pet waste and reducing waste, encouraging recycling and composting.
Cool. The other question that I kind of came tonight with was, what happens like in an earthquake or a flood where we have a huge influx of debris that needs to be thrown away? I'm previously heard from community emergency management training that there's an expectation that our waste haulers would kind of step up during an incident. So do you have any more info?
That is an excellent question. Yeah, so during force majeure, we kind of put everything to the side, and cities work with their hauler as part of their emergency management plan. One of the unfortunate things is the hauler can't always service every community. So one of the best things you can do is to continue working with your hauler to make sure that they're aware of your plan, and the city knows the ability that they have if there's any barriers for them to access your community, disposal sites and such. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for that.
Okay, thanks.
We can do some follow-up work from our emergency manager too of what's in our plan. So I'll talk to Colby about sending something to council.
I have a really funny, I almost didn't ask it, but I'm just going to ask it. Study session, right? So the note about the electric support vehicles, I realize that aligns with city policy on moving to an electric fleet. Is that something that haulers typically already have in this area? Or because given that we're so worried about rates going up, just the way that the landscape has changed since we did our last RFP, I wonder if it's the time to be like, and this too, or if it's kind of just a given that that's already happening.
Your current hauler does have electric support vehicles. Of the other two haulers, one I believe has all electric support vehicles and the other one is partially. So the only one that they're running on traditional fuels would be their container delivery, but the route managers and the education specialists are all using electric vehicles, I believe, already.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to start by saying one of my first questions to you was going to be about outreach and surveying, and I was really glad to hear that you had already done that. So 91% satisfied customers is pretty awesome. I'm glad to hear it because I think here on council, we hear the complaints from our community. And so, having some quantitative data to back it up and to kind of round out our point of view is really helpful. And so I am a little curious about the inclement weather drop boxes. Is that currently something that is available to community members? Because I think a lot of us don't know about it, including myself.
So we have the ability at the city, under the current contract, to bring out drop boxes at a centralized community location if a weather event does extend beyond a certain amount of time. So the way it's currently written, it would be 2 consecutive weeks of mist collection. And then, of course, there are the considerations with what are roads looking like at the time, and is it safe to encourage people to travel to a centralized location to drop off materials at a drop box. But we do currently have that option written into our contract and would continue that going forward.
Sometime in one of the snowy times of the past few years, it was at Popkini, but I didn't want to drive there to do it. So I think just having an extra can, it depends on the weather. There's not a lot of weather that can prevent the garbage truck, but also isn't going to stop a lot of people from,
Yeah, that's partly why I asked, is because I don't know if people really know that that's an option, and also how comfortable and safe people would feel making use of that option as well. And then another question that I have is, and maybe you can go back to the slide that was about the satisfaction rate with the priorities, and then the the results of the survey of people wanting what more, better service. There you go. Requested services. Does the expanded curbside collection include single-use plastics and some of the different? So there's other kind of private, non-municipal contracted garbage collection companies that exist. I feel like I won my non-product plug tonight. And at what point are our local municipal haulers going to move into that, I'm going to say market, to better provide recycling services for people instead of having people going through two different haulers.
Definitely, and that's a great question. Jeanette, please feel free to jump in. I see you have the page open, but there are several items that are included and would overlap with services that are currently offered by other companies. So
The companies that get rid of things very well, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, as Emily mentioned, there is some crossover between those, so batteries and fluorescent bulbs, but some of the things like the multi-layer plastic and the plastic clamshells are not currently being accepted with any of the haulers as part of the extended curbside, but that is definitely something we can ask during this process or in the RFP. We can ask if there are any additional materials and list those two specific ones. And if there's anything else, we can add that to the item. I can't tell you what the price will be because there is a cost to recycling that multi-layer plastic and clamshells that might exceed what they're proposing in the current list.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I would like to know, like, sort of as an addendum, like, what is it with, like, current types of disposal options, and then if there were to be extended options like single-use plastics, clamshells, that kind of thing, like, kind of what that price difference is, so that our community can figure it out for themselves what is more economical. And I also think that, well, I will also ask, how is our RFP trying to align with like King County solid waste initiatives, like the, what is it, zero waste, Replus, yeah, some of those initiatives that are happening, because I think that did I say it wrong? Oh, they're making fun of us for being nerds. Got it. So my question, thank you, is how are stop. Thank you. How are we aligning our RFP with regional efforts to really have zero waste for our community? So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we're definitely taking strides to meet the Replus pledge that we did sign on to make sure that we are really addressing where we can compost and recycle better, and where we can really work to reduce waste overall. So that's certainly taken into account, and we are making our best efforts to meet those goals under the contract language, and of course supplementing that with outreach by city staff and programs here at the city.
I just want to point out that, like, I'm not laughing at you. I'm actually incredibly impressed by the quality of questions that you're all asking.
Speaking of quality of questions, I appreciated Councilmember Curd's note about pet waste bags not going in the compost. Can they just stamp on the compost, pet waste is not compostable? Like, right when you go to put it in there, you're like, oh no, and you put it in the garbage? Like, is that a crazy idea?
As far as labeling on the container?
Yeah. Like,
we could absolutely look at that.
Okay, I mean, not like as a requirement of the contract, but that's a big issue, I think, people sneaking in the compost, because they sell the bags as compostable, even though what you're supposed to put in them is not compostable, which is a whole rant I clearly have saved up. But I just am curious about that. So, thank you.
Yes, definitely. And it is included on the garbage labels currently, but we can look at options to make sure that's reinforced on compost as well.
Is it all pet waste, or is it just specific pets, like our herbivore pets, guinea pigs? Are those they're waste compostable, or is it?
Any and all pets, no matter how exotic.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. I have a follow-up question from something that Councilmember Aldworks asked in regards to, like, when they send out the mailers about what goes where and what can be recycled and things that require special handling, can we ask them to work with the free services that are out there, like the Waste Mobile from King County, like all my single-use plastics, my plastic bags I get from Fred Meyer, other plastic things that are recyclable, I take them back to Fred Meyer and use that bin that's out in the front area. Those are all free things that are out there that people can use, and I think if we can get our hauler to incorporate those things in their materials, it could have a benefit without a cost to residents. So love to see that if there's a way to do that. I love that we have weekly recycle and yard waste pickup. I know not everybody has that. Glad to see we're keeping that. That's excellent. I think the 10-year term is a good way to go. A lot of the complaints that we get are for missed pickups, and I know some of that is due to not having enough investment in equipment because there's no guarantee of those year after year after year. So if we can do the longer term and we can get guarantees in that contract that they will invest, even if it's getting to end of contract, so that we know we're going to get the service and we're not going to get, oh, we're sorry, we're trying. And I understand that. I understand it's not economically feasible for them to do that, but they're going to sign a contract with us and they're going to provide service for that time period. They need to follow through. Like that's what a contract is for. It's not to hope that things happen. It's to say we're both going to commit to these things, and if it doesn't happen, there's a remedy to get those things to happen, or another way to compensate for those things that didn't happen. So I'm big on that. I think it's important. Similar to that, and this one is like my biggest thing, guarantees for communication when missed pickups occur. There's nothing more frustrating as a customer than having a missed pickup and wondering what's going on. Are they going to come tomorrow? Do I leave it out? Do I pull it in? Hope to come back next week. And the neighbors are all asking each other. Nobody seems to know. They email city council. So
as soon as you bring it in, they come.
yeah. So no, like having a guarantee of like we will email and we will call within X period of time is really important. Just from a customer service standpoint, to me, it's not hard these days. There's auto dialers, mass emails, whatever it may be. Please include that, because I know that we're seeing sometimes now we're getting it, but we're not always getting it, and it does cause a lot of confusion. So, final two things: love the store. I love going in there and dropping things off that I can't recycle at my home, or it requires a special call if I'm out and about. Dropping off recycling, dropping off batteries. It's great. I hope we can keep that. And then credits for missed pickups. I like that idea too. If you're not going to get a service, you should get credited back for the money you're paying if you're not going to get an extra pickup to collect those things that didn't get picked up before. So love to see that in there. Hopefully we get those. But I also want to echo the community bins. I like that idea. I think there was one unfortunate week a couple years ago where we had 3 Mondays where it snowed heavily and it was piling up, and at that point I was ready to go and wherever I needed to go to get rid of the trash because it was just piling out on the street corner. But I like that idea, and if we can utilize that in the future when there's a need, that's great. That's really good. Thank you.
Sounds like we were like New York City for like 3 weeks.
That week.
Yeah, that month. I have a question about the cost slide. A couple of questions. Number one is, what is that baseline for the 60% increase? The estimate, it says 60% increase. Oh, is that the weights of 60/40? Oh, I see. But there was a mention of. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification. The question about. It was implied that my prices are going to go up because of the stuff listed in that little paragraph. What is the poor recycling markets? I'm not an expert in that industry, so like, how bad is it? What does that mean, poor recycling?
The value of the recyclables has decreased in some materials to it costs more to collect and process than what they make on them. But it's important to remember they're not paying to throw them away. So they are going to a higher value. And so they put the calculations of what they expect to get from the materials into the rates. And so the markets are not great. Some of them are picking up, but they're not super strong right now.
So but it sounds like if the material, they're going to know ahead of time I'm going to recycle this thing, and it's going to bring me X. So the rate from the day one is going to be higher, because if the markets are bad right now, it's not like they're going to improve in the future. Or if they did improve, then they make more profit, I guess. But it's up to the next contract to discuss. So that's the thing. It's just about recyclables, or it's not about. Or about is it the like what is the how do we know that the rates we're getting are the good rates for our residents? You know, that's the really fundamental question.
So this is exactly what the city's doing, a competitive procurement. So instead of doing a sole source negotiation with your hauler, and they come forward and say, these are the rates, we are going out and we're saying, this is the contract we want for our community. These are the services our community wants. And then we have the opportunity for all the haulers in the area to give us the pricing on those. So having the market tell us what that value is, what the cost is for those services, will ensure that you are getting the best rates possible.
Will you get the details, like what do they expect to get back from the recycled market and all that stuff?
They don't give us the breakdown of costs. So they'll give us, in the spreadsheet, they'll give us a price for every service level. And then there's also pricing for the alternatives that Emily mentioned.
And in the contracts, we allow for increases in rates over time? Is it's capped? Or
as in your current contract, there are annual service adjustments. The service component increases by CPI, and the disposal component increases the same as King County increases their pricing. The fixed annual charge, which you guys heard the rate restructure on that, throws it off just a little bit, but generally it's proportionate. And so we have that all built in on an annual basis.
Emily, can you speak to some of the other cost factors to beyond recycling of what we're anticipating, why we would, or also just in the market of what we're seeing, but what are some of the drivers since the last time we did an RFP that make us expect that things will go up?
Yeah, so to give you an idea of how much we're expecting this to go up, we're seeing proposals coming in at about 25 to 40% higher than current costs. One of the largest reasons is the way we built the increases with CPI is not keeping up with the hauler's costs. Vehicles have had a huge expense. If anybody's bought anything with a microchip, you know that those costs have gone up significantly. The haulers are having supply chain disruptions with their materials. As we mentioned, the value of recycling has gone down, and then there's just uncertainty by the haulers. They're trying to gauge over 10 years, and of course this contract doesn't start for over a year. So they're trying to gauge 11 years in the future, how are they going to make sure they are not losing money? And so because of that, it does increase costs pretty significantly at the beginning of the contract.
Sorry, I just want to say, because as a customer, you know, I see rates go up. I mean, it's for us, some of us, it's okay. For a lot of people in the city, it's not okay. So we see the costs go up, we see some level of service go down, and we wonder what's going on. And this is, I don't know how we can build those you know, things in the contract so that, you know, yes, okay, fine, you will your costs go up, you have union contract, whatever, you know, we understand, but like, you know, you cannot be at the expense of the residents of the city. So that's because that's what's happening. It seems like it's happening, you know, prices go up, service go down. That means somebody's saving costs and making more money. That means more margin, you know, so from a business. So I don't know how we can build those into the contract.
So the only two ways, major ways, and the common ways that the rates will increase are by the CPI and the disposal from King County. Everything else, the union contracts, the cost of compost disposal, the recycling markets, the hauler's taking the risk on all of those. So unless something completely unforeseen happens, they should only be coming with those annual increases. And one of the things staff and I have talked a lot about is how do we ensure that customers are getting the best deal? You know, we didn't give them like the Cadillac of Cadillac contracts, because that would cost people too much. So we spoke a lot about where's our balance? Where do we want to get the best service but not cost residents too much money?
If the costs go up by 25-40%, the prices, the rates for us, for residents, what about those who are there going to be programs to help those who couldn't even afford the previous rates? Are those whatever budgets going to increase by 25-40% to help those folks who couldn't even afford the previous rates? Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, and we do have the utility discounts for water and sewer that we'll be matching under this contract. And along with that, staff is looking at putting together a more comprehensive list of resources in the community that are currently available, and of course adding as they become available to ensure that that is communicated well to the public.
Yeah.
And we're making sure that the resources that are out there are connected with the community as they
That's very important because it's a big price jump. It's not like 5-10%. You're talking about up to 40% jump. That's a big chunk of money from somebody's monthly income. Thank you.
I was going to ask along similar lines. I understand the different factors that have led to this anticipated 25-40% jump. Is there any way to bake that in so that it's not after 10 years, bam, it's a huge jump? It's progressive, right? We've looked at that with our other utilities and the rates and making sure that it's more of a steady increase versus just suddenly you have to pivot like that. And I think the other thing that I appreciated that Deputy Mayor Alcabra said is the increase in support to families who maybe aren't cost burdened right now, maybe it's just okay, and then suddenly it's not. And not suddenly, there's notice, but it's still, it might be hard to come up with that money. And I think one thing that stood out to me on the slide is it said low-income seniors and disabled ratepayers, and I would just say low-income households, not independent of anything else, because being senior or disabled doesn't mean you are low income, and you can be low income without either of those two things. And that's, I think, something we've talked about in other study sessions. So just making sure that it's for people who are dealing with lower income, and then just making sure we have an appropriate scaling of resources as things rise in cost.
We can certainly look at adjusting the language on that section.
Cool, thank you.
And then to address your comment about the steady rate increases, that's definitely a thing we can look at putting an alternative in for. So instead of having the contract increase each year by CPI, we could set a 5%, which is potentially higher than what we expect CPI to be over the 10 years. So that would hopefully start with a slightly lower rate, but then larger increases each year. So that can be something that we can put an alternative, and when we come back to council, we would basically say, here's your current expected costs for the entire city for garbage. Here's what the proposal came in, and then, here's what we can save by implementing something like that. So definitely, I'll work with staff on that.
That's awesome. Thank you. I guess when it comes to like recycling and dealing with that, do the different haulers really have vastly different methods of dealing with the recycling they have to sell and get rid of? Are we going to see a lot of variance? Or are they all kind of, if we only have 4 companies that we're going to get proposals from, because that's just who's in the industry, do they just have 4 other ways to dispose of the recycling? I guess I'm wondering if there's a lot of variety in that market anyway.
They're mostly the same.
Okay. So I kind of thought maybe, but there could be a whole industry I'm not aware of.
So just a process check. We had really essentially 3 components of the study session. I think we've gotten good feedback around the base contract and the enhancements of some of those optional services. I do want to make sure that as we leave tonight, I realize that it's not there's no right answer, but I want to get some feedback from the staff proposal of how the proposals would be weighted. Again, as we talk about rates would increase significantly. I think there's a tension then that we got to address around how much do you want to put the decision factor into the rates, and how much are those optional services, many of which are, again, of values that we hold and are articulated from council existing policy and the vision around some of the environmental initiatives and different things. So we're proposing 60/40, trying to like find the right balance of not saying it's all about money or it's all about the services. But if there are any reactions to that, again, how we weight the proposals will affect the ranking of the proposals that come back. So we want to make sure that if there's any thoughts, let's get those out.
In my opinion, it's hard to tell without seeing numbers or things. If there are examples of if you do a 60/40, 70/30, 20/80, I mean, I don't know what would be the, it's hard to evaluate. It seems reasonable. What was it in the past contract? Do you know?
I believe it was 60/40. Most cities go with the 60/40 split, saying that rates are important to us, but customer services as well. Cities that choose a 70/30 split are telling the industry rates are very important to us. And cities that go with a 50/50 are saying we really want the best service possible. So that's generally the theme that comes out of this selection.
And when you say best service, like what does that mean? Like you get it twice a day?
When the evaluation team looks at the proposals, does reference checks, tours the sites, and interviews the different haulers, they're picking the one that they think will provide the absolute best service for the community. And then the higher you rate that, the more you're saying, well, okay, we'll pay a little bit more because we think we're going to get a better fit on that customer service side.
So I know you do this a lot. When you see the scorings come in, is it typically pretty close, or is there usually one that kind of pops that's scoring better than the others?
On the qualitative?
Yeah, and just when the full total scores come in, are they usually pretty close together? Is it a thin spread, or is there some distance between the person who comes out scoring the highest and the folks that are second and third?
It really varies.
Okay.
Traditionally, an incumbent will come in lower on rates just because they're already established in the community. They know everything. So they can come in usually the best at rates. And then the qualitative really depends on what the city's looking for. One example I like to give is in a call center, for example. One city might value a local call center where all the people are from the community and know all the different cities, where another city might value a larger call center where if there's disruptions, you have backup and redundancies. So that reliability is really important to them. So the scoring on the qualitative is very personal to your community and making sure that you get the best hauler for your community.
Okay. Do you see haulers that had the business, lost the business, and then back bidding again? Do they typically understand the city pretty well too, or is it like too far in between when they provided service and when they're rebidding?
It's usually a little far. It's 10 years. There's a lot of times staff changeover, both on the city side and on the hauler side.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're asking if this is okay?
Just as long as, if there was any strong reactions.
That was your question. Is this split okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'd hate to have it come back and then feel like, ooh.
Let's go 80-20?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that when you come back.
95-5, yeah.
95. And it seems reasonable if that's what we did last time. Or what was it the time before? 20 years ago.
I would have to check on that.
20 years ago was 2004.
I can go grab my laptop. I might have the answer to that.
It's not important, but if it's something similar, then let's just do it.
This is the standard. Most cities use this.
Seems reasonable.
Just to give you another voice, I think this is fine using the standard. I don't have strong feelings to shift it one way or the other, so I would go with your recommendation here.
All right, I think we're ready to adjourn.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm very excited to be back in June or July and pick up this conversation, so.